Hello and welcome back to Voices 2020. Get ready for session 2, Inside the Fashion System. Throughout the event, we're broadcasting here from our COVID-secure studio, where most of our speakers are coming to us virtually. We're also hosting a handful of in-person conversations and sharing some exclusive pre-recorded talks, which we've been putting together over the last few weeks, especially for this event. If you missed yesterday's sessions on the wider world, well, here's a 90-second recap as compiled by our deputy editor, Brian Baskin, in his BOF professional wrap-up of the first day's key learnings. Dr. Dambisa Moyo, a global economist and author, compared the demand shock brought on by COVID-19, rising debt levels, and the contraction in global trade to the conditions in the 1929 at the onset of the Great Depression. Venture capitalist Roger McNamee blamed Facebook, Amazon, and other tech giants for a cascading series of catastrophes from the online world into the real world. And UK Member of Parliament David Lammy noted how rising inequality and a shrinking safety net left disadvantaged communities particularly vulnerable during the pandemic. And yet, many who spoke at Voices on Tuesday saw opportunity in the current crises, to take action against big tech monopolies, opportunities to fight systemic racism, and to fundamentally rethink what makes us happy and how we define the good life to which we aspire. So, Rashad Robinson called on the fashion industry to focus less on fixing Black people and to instead examine the system that prevents them from being hired or advancing in their careers. Science journalist Laura Spinney recalled the collaborative spirit that led to the creation of the World Health Organization. She said she hopes COVID-19 revives the idea that we need a global response to a global crisis. And in search of a new green age of global information revolution, noted scholar Carlota Perez said to address the current crisis as well as the looming climate emergency, we have to change our own lifestyles and aspirations completely. She reminded us that pleasure doesn't necessarily come from having lots of things. So now you're kind of caught up, but if you want to experience the full session, which I highly recommend, it's available on demand exclusively for BOF professional members as part of the wrap-up. Thank you, Brian, for your concise insights from yesterday. Today, we have another excellent group of speakers joining us from around the world as we consider the changes we need to make in our industry, reimagine what's possible, and look at the exciting opportunities that this could bring in the post-COVID era. And remember, throughout Voices 2020, you can join the global conversation using the hashtag BOF Voices and also ask questions of our speakers using the chat window next to the video player on your screen. But as always, we need to begin with a little bit of industry context and the kind of rigorous analysis that BOF is known for. This is the 5th year we're partnering with McKinsey & Company to create the State of Fashion, our forward-looking report on the year ahead. It's based on months of analysis, examining over 500 fashion companies and gathering the views of more than 300 fashion executives around the world. As a BOF professional, you were amongst the first to receive the report in your inboxes this morning. To give you an overview and to set the context for this important session, we've put together a short presentation with Achim Berg from McKinsey & Company. Take a look.
Welcome to the presentation of the State of Fashion 2021 report. Today, we want to look at the key themes that were driving the industry in 2020, and we want to be brave and take a look into the future.
This year's report is 128 pages long and 75,000 words. So we thought we'd start with 5 key takeaways in case you haven't had a chance to dig through the report. The most important and first takeaway is that a recovery is going to take some time. Probably not until the end of 2022. In our first scenario, earlier recovery, which assumes that a vaccine or other medical treatments help to contain the coronavirus pandemic, we expect that the fashion industry will return to 2019 levels of sales not until the end of 2022. And that is the more optimistic scenario. In the later recovery scenario, which assumes that the virus is not contained with a vaccine in the short term, a recovery is not expected until late 2023. Of course, there are variations in geography, and we have already seen a return to growth in the Chinese market, while the US and Europe are lagging behind.
Secondly, we see an acceleration in key consumer trends. Digitization, e-commerce, casual, but also sustainability have gained in importance. Those trends already existed before the crisis, but they got accelerated through lockdowns, through working from home, and through many other changes in the way we live. We expect that those trends will impact the fashion industries in the year to come.
The third most important takeaway from the report is that the changes precipitated by the pandemic are here to stay. And that means the operating model for success has completely changed. Everything from sourcing all the way to store economics needs to be re-evaluated for the post-pandemic fashion industry. Fashion companies need to create slicker, smarter operating models and learn how to operate in a more responsible, sustainable way that keeps in mind people, planet, and profit.
The gap between the super winners and the rest of the industry will likely further widen. We also expect a massive consolidation to happen in the first 2 quarters of the new year. Strong brands with strong balance sheets will have a competitive advantage over those players that were already in a weak condition when the crisis started.
And finally, vaccine or no vaccine, the coming months will be absolutely critical for the fashion industry. Executives will need to balance risk-taking with growth opportunities, flexibility with agility, in order to make the right decisions as the pandemic continues.
The fashion industry will long remember the devastation of 2020. 2016 was the worst year for the fashion industry since the financial crisis. Since then, we've seen economic profit rising quite significantly. However, that came to a harsh end in 2020. We expect economic profit to decline by almost 90% in 2020. This will, of course, have an impact on the winners and losers in this industry. For many years, we've seen that the number of value destroyers is increasing. Those companies that either generate losses or are unable to earn their cost of capital. But 2020 will be different because almost 3/4 of all listed companies will not create any value. We believe only 27% will be able to call themselves value creators. The financial industry has already taken a stance. We've seen that the super winners and the digital players have a higher stock price growth than the rest of the market. Companies focused on Asia Pacific are doing better than those focused on Europe or North America. Casual is king. We've seen that all while working from home. And we also see that the value and the discount players are pressuring the mid-market.
And now for the most anticipated part of the State of Fashion 2021, the 10 themes that will define the industry in the year ahead.
COVID-19 has impacted the lives and livelihoods of billions of people, disrupting international trade, travel, the economy, and consumer behavior. To manage ongoing uncertainty, companies need to enable flexibility and faster decision-making, and balance speed against discipline in the pursuit of innovation. Demand for fashion is unlikely to return to pre-pandemic levels amid restrained spending power, unemployment, and rising inequality. Companies need to seize new opportunities and double down on outperforming categories, value segments, and territories. Digital adoption soared amid the pandemic, with brands embracing live streaming, customer service video chat, and social shopping. Fashion players must optimize the online experience and channel mix while persuasively integrating the human touch. As consumers become more aware of the plight of vulnerable fashion workers, and momentum for change builds, companies need to offer more dignity, security, and justice to employees throughout the global value chain. Travel retail will face continued disruption as international tourism remains subdued. Fashion companies will need to engage better with new customers and make strategic investments in recovering markets to unlock new revenue opportunities. COVID-19 highlighted that more products do not necessarily yield more profit. Fashion companies must reduce complexity while increasing full-price sell-through and reduce inventory levels by taking a demand-focused approach for both new products and in-season replenishment. During the pandemic, the gap between fashion's best-performing companies and the rest widened, with some players already bankrupt and others propped up by government subsidies. Companies will maneuver to take market share and grow their capabilities. Fashion players need to mitigate future supply chain disruptions by moving away from transactional supplier relationships in favor of deeper partnerships that bring greater agility and accountability. Permanent store closures will continue to rise in the post-pandemic period, while a potential power shift from landlords to retailers in most regions could compel fashion players to rethink their retail footprints to improve store-level ROI. An enduring new model for work is likely to emerge as fashion companies refine their blends of remote and on-premises work, invest in reskilling talent, and instill a greater sense of shared employee purpose and belonging.
So those are the 10 themes that will define the state of fashion in 2021. But to give you a bit more context, we'd like to go in a bit deeper on a few of these themes.
Theme number 2 is called diminished demand. That's what we've all experienced in 2020. And that's also what we believe we should expect for 2021 and 22. The decline in turnover in April, March, and May was massive. The recovery after that was actually faster in most regions than what we had expected. However, we've now reached a plateau from which onwards we should expect slower growth. Depending on which scenario you believe in, an earlier or later recovery will happen. It will take between 2 and 3 years until we reach 2019 levels.
Theme number 3 is the digital sprint. Over a period of 8 months in 2020, the portion of fashion industry sales coming from online grew from 16% to 29%. In only 8 months, that's the equivalent of 6 years of growth. Perhaps it's not surprising then that close to half of the fashion executives surveyed for this year's BOF McKinsey Executive Survey expect that 40% of sales will come from online. Now, we must remember that 2020 was a bit of an exception. There will be a natural dip in online sales in 2021, but the long-term trajectory is one of growth as physical stores will continue to be challenged and shut down.
Let's look at theme number 5, travel interrupted. That's exactly what we all experienced this year. It's also what we will likely experience in the years to come. Travel is hugely important for the fashion industry. We all have seen that. If you look at travel retail, if you look at international travelers shopping in Europe or North America. We expect the recovery to take place in 4 stages. After the immediate crisis in 2020, we will hopefully see that the travel restrictions are coming down in 2021. Once the pandemic has ended, we should expect an economic recovery before we actually reach the next normal. 2/3 of the fashion executives expect that all of this will take 2 to 3 years. Looking into our predictions, we can easily see that this will take 4 to 5 years.
And finally, we'd like to highlight theme 6. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic, the fashion industry was churning out products at unsustainable rates. Only 60% of products were selling through at full price, leaving mountains of unsold inventory and creating billions of dollars of waste and deteriorating margins. Going forward, fashion executives say that they're going to produce less. There will be fewer SKUs and fewer collections, resulting in a more optimized model and underscoring that creating more products isn't the solution.
I hope you enjoyed the short presentation of the State of Fashion 2021 report.
As always, you can download the full report at businessoffashion.com and mckinsey.com. So there we are. That's the state of fashion in 2021. Now I'm pleased to have Achim Berg joining us from Frankfurt, Germany. Hello, Achim. Can you hear me, Achim?
I can hear you. Hi, Imran. How are you?
How's it going?
Well, it's different to last year. Obviously, I would have preferred to be with you in the Soho farmhouse, but really enjoyed, the content and the discussion so far.
Well, I'm so glad that we were able to have this time together today, because a couple of things have happened since the report was sent to print. So I just have a couple of questions that I hoped could help bring our findings into the present moment, as it were. So first, Achim, when we were writing the report, the vaccine was still this kind of mysterious, uncertain thing. And since then, now there are 3 vaccines that have come through with quite strong results in the phase 3 clinical trials, and there's already now plans for global distribution. In our report, we have an earlier recovery scenario and a later recovery scenario. Do you think that these 3 vaccines mean that we might end up with more of the earlier scenario, which is slightly more optimistic?
So I think it's a very good question, and I think the answer is it depends. Yeah. So I think, as a matter of fact, we had expected that the vaccines, would arrive. We also had expected that we would see a certain rollout. So I think the colleagues from the McKinsey healthcare, practice were quite helpful, and they had expected. And they also had built different scenarios. So the McKinsey Global Fashion Index scenarios that we have in the report are reflective of that. Let's face it. I think we expected the vaccines, but we didn't really expect to see the second wave hitting us in Europe that early. So it was more expected to be now, end November, beginning of December. But as a matter of fact, they arrived already in October. And we've seen, lockdowns in most countries. So I think there will be a bit of a balance. But as we also discussed yesterday, or you discussed with your guest yesterday, the vaccine is required for the recovery, but it will take time until, you really roll it out. Also until, things like wearing a mask and keeping distance will go away. And therefore, without a, disappearance of the pandemic restrictions in day-to-day life, brick and mortar retail will not come back, to the extent we had it. And therefore, I believe we will be somewhere between 2 and 3 years. So going back to 2019 levels in 22 or 23.
Okay, so the onset of all of these highly effective vaccines isn't necessarily going to change the pace of the recovery. The other thing that I wanted to check with you on is, you mentioned lockdowns just now. Just behind me here in London, the lockdown, the national lockdown in the UK has been lifted. All the shops are opening. But there's a sense that after the Christmas season, we may all go back into lockdown again. So I'm curious, the stores are opening right now in certain places. Do you have a sense, from your conversations with clients about what they're expecting for retail in the coming months, including this critical Christmas shopping season, which is upon us?
Yeah, I think, as you say, it's very different from country to country. UK retail was closed, or non-necessary retail was closed. In Germany, all the fashion stores, stood open. While we also closed the restaurants. And that is a different pattern across Europe, also across other countries. I think we will learn a lot, from Thanksgiving and the impact of Thanksgiving, because we've seen that a lot of people traveled, a lot of people, were going to their relatives, spending time with their relatives. And I think there's a lot of people that expect that before we celebrate Christmas, we will see an impact of that to North America. And also to the infection rates, and in the end also to the ICU units and how they are used. I think it's not unlikely that we're going to see another lockdown or a sort of a lockdown in January, February, and March. I think vaccination, but also the warm weather in the Northern Hemisphere will likely only have an impact in April, May. So it's going to be a long winter and it's going to take patience. But I have to say personally, and also with the business, it's so important that the vaccines were announced before Christmas. Just imagine, we would all sit under the tree and nobody would know what the vaccines, what would happen to them. So there's a lot of hope and there's a bit of a silver lining. But I think also customer behavior will only change when we can somehow see the end of this. And that is likely April, May next year.
Yeah. One last question from me, which is, in the first set of lockdowns, we saw that huge spike in online activity, particularly around e-commerce. Is your market intel saying that is continuing now in the second set of lockdowns? Or, how is performance now compared to 2019, for example?
I think if you look back March, April, we first seen a bit of a dip because I think nobody knew what a lockdown would mean. A lot of people had to sort themselves, had to sort their private and business life. So traffic was down, business was down in almost all e-commerce businesses, the platforms, but also the brand.coms. I think the second lockdown, there's already a training effect. I think a lot of people, worked from home anyway. They had, sorted their private life. So we haven't seen that dip. And the more successful players have seen quite an increase throughout the year. One of my clients called it a shot in the arm, not a vaccine, but maybe more vitamins, to a lot of the e-commerce businesses. Overall, we see for Europe, for example, an increase of the online share in fashion luxury from 16% in 19 to 29-30% end of August, beginning of September. If you take a full year view, it's going to be rather 25-26%. And we expect that that share will be in the next year in Europe around 22%. But so a bit down to the peaks that we currently see, but still, a significant increase to the 16% we had beforehand. And that also shows what we say a lot in the report. It's very much an acceleration of existing trends. Yeah, and digital was there before COVID, and it will be stronger after COVID.
Okay, got it. Well, now for all of those who hold a Voices Executive Pass, the State of Fashion 2021 Town Hall Q&A will start 15 minutes after the end of today's content sessions, and I'll be joined by Akim and his colleague Anita Balchandani to answer your burning questions about the expectations for the year ahead. So, Executive Pass holders, you can access the Town Hall session through the agenda page on the Voices Events website. Akim and I hope to see you there. Now, for business leaders in the fashion industry, navigating 2020 has meant facing one new challenge after another. Supply chain disruptions, store closures, the lack of fashion shows to drive consumer interest, and of course, the imperative to take care of employees amid the pandemic. This year has been a masterclass in crisis management and strategic planning for a post-pandemic reality that, frankly, still remains uncertain and unpredictable. In late November, we saw an opportunity to take your pulse on how the fashion system needs to change in 2021. So we conducted our first global BOF community exit poll. And what does it say? The majority of you remain optimistic about your company's capability to navigate the crisis. But only 25% of you believe that things in the fashion industry will become much better next year. The rest of you believe that things will stay the same or get worse. So taking those two findings together is quite interesting because it seems we're all confident about our companies and how they can adapt in the face of the crisis, but the challenging circumstances are still very, very clear to us in the kind of wider context. Indeed, a core theme in the State of Fashion 2021 is that business leaders will need to learn to live with the virus. To manage the unprecedented levels of uncertainty that lay ahead, companies need to retire their operating models. They must embrace flexibility and faster decision-making and balance speed against discipline in the pursuit of innovation. Remo Ruffini is one business leader who's shown a knack for reimagining how global luxury fashion brands can operate in this kind of situation. In 2003, he took over the helm of Moncler, the historic French brand which specializes in producing down jackets. In doing so, he took Moncler from 60 million euros in annual revenue to 1.4 billion euros in revenue by 2019. And part of the company's recent success can be attributed to a new business model, Moncler Genius. It's a platform of innovation and creativity where top designers interpret Moncler's identity, and the collections are delivered monthly with a dedicated communications strategy, as we recently examined in a BOF professional case study. Have a look at this video. So now that it's clear we're going to have to live with the virus for some time, even the most innovative go-to-market strategies like Moncler Genius need to be overhauled. And today, Remo Ruffini, CEO of Moncler, is here to reveal his pandemic pivot for Moncler Genius exclusively at Voices 2020. I'll be taking questions for Remo from the community, so as I'm discussing with him, make sure to add your questions into the chat window next to your video player. Hello, Remo. It's nice to have you with us from Milan. How are you today?
Sorry, I'm very good. It's snowing in Milano, means I feel good. It's my moment. And very happy. I'm very happy to talk with you, very happy to talk with your community.
Well, thank you for being with us. You know, Remo, I want to start by taking you back maybe just to the worst phase of the crisis for you. And I'm keen to get into your head at that time. What were you most worried about when the crisis first hit? I mean, from a business perspective.
I mean, as you remember, end of February, I remember I was honestly quite shocked, beginning of March, because my feeling was what's going to happen, I'm going to last. At the beginning, I was honestly worry about the business, but worry about the world as well. I think I heard from China starting, a few weeks before. And then after that, we really have a strong lockdown. We decided to close our company as well at the beginning of March. And then we have a couple of months very tough, closing the house, really work on everything, work on collection, work on business, in front of the iPad every day, 10 hours a day. We design a collection online. We make a fitting online, means for the spring summer collection, means was a unique opportunity. At the beginning was quite tough in terms of emotion. I think energy is everything for me, is everything for my company. And after 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, I think I said this crisis could be an opportunity. Honestly, we have to think about what's going on. Everything was very accelerating. We have a clear strategy behind us, but we have to accelerate our strategy. And then, soon I decided to facing this crisis with totally different approach, going to really think what could be the opportunity for the next step. And we really start to work in a different way, totally different way. Still today, I cannot travel. That is not it's not easy for my job, because I used to travel from China, New York, Japan, going back to Italy, design the collection, then go to the market, understand what's going on. As you know, for me, feedback in the market from the customer is very, very important. Fast feedback is super important. We are not a traditional fashion company. We really want to really stay tuned with our customer. This is our key. And means flexibility. Then I thought that we cannot have any more a 3-year strategy, 2-year strategy, 1-year strategy, but we must be very flexible in general, in terms of digital approach, in terms of logistic approach, in terms of ideas, in terms of collection, in terms of talking with the designer. And flexibility is today for me is a key. I don't take any decision for tomorrow. I really try to move day by day, to have my object in front of me, my ideas in front of me, but at the same time, I really need to be flexible. Think about the business. China is very successful, and we didn't know 2 months, 3 months ago. I mean, Korea is never locked down. Korea is good since ever, because I think they used to have virus, let's say. Japan is very up and down, because when the prime minister say stay in house, everybody they lock down, they auto lockdown. Europe we have like 3 months lockdown at the beginning of the year. There we have another month in November that for us, as you know, is our November, December, and October is the best period for our business. Means now we reopened 2 days ago in Italy. England is opening today. All Europe is reopened. For sure, Europe is not the best market at the moment. For sure, we don't have tourists. We don't have visitors. I think local people, they're quite scared because especially in Italy, they cannot move from one area to another area. But I don't want to be pessimistic. I want to be, I have honestly a lot of energy. I really think we can make the next step. We can really think to make the next step. But today, I don't want to wait that this problem is finished. I don't think we're going to finish tomorrow. I don't think we're going to finish 2021. I don't think we're going to finish 2022. I think 2020 could be something like, I hope second half will be more energetic, at least for the domestic market. 22 could be start something. I think the 23 is the year we can have the same approach as the 2019. Means is 3-4 years. Means if you cannot stay sit in your chair and say I wait what's going when this problem is gonna finish. Not. I think we need a different approach, different project, new ideas, new way to work. Try to find the same experience we have offline with the same experience we have on physical, transform the same experience on digital. At the same time, you have to build up a totally different approach on omnichannel. You have to totally different approach to talk with your people. It's not only question to have a live streaming from the store to sell something more. This is, I don't think, is very interesting. I think it's a part of the game, but the most interesting is to redesign your company based on the future. The future could be the next 2 years. Is more than enough, to change your face, your company. I think Moncler was.
Let me interrupt you there, because that kind of lays everything out. But I want to make sure we start with Moncler Genius, because Moncler Genius has been kind of this very pivotal strategy for you over the last few years. The whole industry was interested in it. We did a case study on it at BOF because so many people were asking questions about it and we're trying to understand it. But as you said just now, we have to redesign the way we do things, and that includes things like Moncler Genius. So tell me now, what are you planning to do with Moncler Genius going forward? Because clearly it can't stay still, as you were just saying. Everything needs to be changed. What are your plans for shifting and kind of pivoting Moncler Genius?
Actually, it was exactly, what we say in March and April, I say I have to speed up my strategy. I have to move very fast. I think I don't want to change anything. I think Genius was a turning point for the company. Genius was successful, but I always use the word, we have to update our software. Means not change everything, but update. And I always thinking, if music shift from CD to Spotify or to Netflix, whatever it is, why should fashion remain the same? I think they must change. And we decide to change almost everything. For sure, the approach is. But then we can talk. I think we want to change the location. The location will be from Milano. I think we're looking for a super energetic country like as China. I think we're going to move in China. The collection will be more customer centric, and I think for sure, because it's very important today, the collection must be very, 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 very sustainable. And I think the format is a big change for us. The format become a media, not anymore a fashion show, not anymore an event, become a media, and the Genius building became a studios. I think this is another turning point. I don't want to make another event for thousands and thousands of people. But I really think about the Cinecittà in Rome. It's like a studio that you can really broadcast everything for every people all around the world. Means the event will be like really a teaser. And the launch that we have during the next year will be really the episode. Think about little bit Netflix. When you go to Netflix, you see a teaser, then you decide to see the movie. If you decide to see the movie, you have the different episode. This we're going to present all as usual, all the every month something. Every month one designer, every month one editorial project, every month one approach. We are honestly inspired a lot from art, for sure, a lot from music. For sure, this a turning point for my vision is gaming, and for cinema for sure every day. Genius will come to you whatever is your passion. I think we have to attract a lot of more young generation. Means we have to stay tuned with the passion of these people. I think this is very important. Think about talk with people. We're talking with people from art. Why we're not talking? Think about the live auction. People with music, I'm really keen to think about, the jukebox concept that I personally love a lot. Gaming again is a turning point. I think we really talk with different people to make something very, very, very strong in the gaming world.
Okay, so Remo, I just want to be clear. So one, there's no more physical event, and you're going to turn it into a digital broadcast. And the physical event is what Moncler Genius kind of really made. It was kind of a real revolution for fashion events, because you had 12,000 customers come to your event. So you're moving away from the physical event. What about the timing? When will you be doing Moncler Genius? I'm imagining in February. It's not possible.
No, it's totally different. It's not. I don't want to skip physical. It will be physical, but broadcasting as well. I want people there, but with a totally different approach. More with the approach of the studios. We're going to move from February. We're going to move to September. That for us is very important. It's more close to our season. It's more close to our approach, to our attitude, and we're going to stay more tuned with our customer, because, as you know, second half of the year is very our DNA. Means timing September, going to China will be physical, but at the same time really honestly broadcasting through these different tools, different approach, through music, through art, through gaming, through cinema, and to all the world that I feel was already in our DNA, but we really speed up all this approach, because this moment we need to make something totally different, a totally different view. For sure, we don't want to leave Milano Fashion Week. For example, we're going to have a slot on the Milano Fashion Week, the different time for sure, because we're going to be in China. We'll be on, I think, in the morning. For sure, we don't want to stay far from New York. We're going to have something broadcasting in some square in New York. And why not in the Tube in Tokyo? I think we really work a lot on this project. I think we have a lot of ideas. We already have some partner in the different passion we have, and I think we'll be hopefully to reach the goal. But I'm really excited that could be a very strong next step, because I think the game today is to mix the physical experience, but to have as well a very strong digital experience.
That's a bit like what we're doing here with Voices. You know, Voices was a physical event, and we've kind of created this hybrid physical digital element with the global broadcast. So I feel like the world of fashion, you know, media, fashion brands are moving towards this new hybrid model. But I just want to recap all the changes there that you've listed out. So one, you're moving the date of Moncler Genius to September to be closer in season, which is, I think, something that we've heard a lot of fashion brands thinking about, so that, you know, the energy created by a show is kind of closer to your big season, which is, of course, the winter. Number two, you're moving the show to China, but it will stay on the Milan Fashion Week calendar, so you'll still have a slot, so you'll figure out a way of doing it in the evening in China, or later in the day in China, so it can be during the day in Milan. And third, you're moving to this kind of hybrid format where there's some physical elements, but the real focus is on broadcasting it to the world. But I have one other question for you. Since you're moving it to China, is there a chance that Moncler Genius could be kind of a rotating show so that it happens in different parts of the world?
Yeah, this is more or less our idea before COVID. This is our idea, and then that's why I always say we accelerate our strategy. Tomorrow, September could be in China, maybe we can repeat 2 times in China. Honestly, we don't have, I think we're going to be very, very flexible. We have to follow the energy. But the most important point, I always say to the people in my company, the people on my team, we don't have the customer don't have to come to us. We will go to them. This is one of the most important things. Means not anymore only physical to weigh the people, but we have to think about, we have to go in every room, in every house, in every city, just to talk. And we expect, last year we have more than 12,000 people. Honestly, maybe I'm too pretentious, I don't know, but I expect over 100 million people, over 200 million people. You know, this is my dream. Right. I don't know if I can reach the goal, but this is what we have in mind, you know, what we is, because anyway, the fashion world is changed, the luxury world is changed. You cannot sleep and say, I'm waiting when this crisis is going to finish. I think we have to involve, improve. And having said that, I don't want to make another digital fashion show that I don't feel is interesting. You know, I really try to find something very, very, you know, again, with strong energy. I really feel about the studios. I really think about a director that is going to make a movie. You know, I really, when I say I want to make also something physical in China, I think, you know, different stage, you know, with different director, they can talk with different people all around the world. Yeah. Talk with the Milano Fashion Week, talk to the people at home, talking with the people on the tube in Aoyama, in Tokyo. I mean, it's very, very ambitious, very ambitious, I know. We have only 9 months in front of us. We start working, or 10 months, whatever. We start working a few months ago. It's very, very ambitious, but this is our ambition.
I mean, Remo, it sounds amazing. And you can see like the vision coming out. I want to take a couple of questions that have come through from our community, because people are quite curious about Moncler Genius. So we have a question from Francisco Ferreira, who's contacting us from Barcelona in Spain. And he's asking about Moncler's recycling strategies and sustainability strategies. You know, what are your plans in that regard, Remo?
As you know, we are very, very keen on that. We are quite proud because for the second year we lead in the industries on the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. That for us was quite interesting. In October, we launched our main project that is Moncler Born to Protect. It is our sustainable project is very close to us because I think Moncler was born to protect the people. And this is, I think, is very, very interesting, based on 5 pillars, basically, based on climate action, circular economy, fair sourcing, diversity, and give back to local community. That I personally like a lot this. The Moncler Sustainable Plan has a clear goal, becoming carbon neutral in 2021, recycle of nylon fabric production by 2023, and recycling DIST, that is our certificate, down certificate in 2021. Traceability for raw material. Down, as I want to remember, down is already traced from 2015. And use of sustainable nylon as well, 50% sustainable by at least 2025. I try to speed up a little bit this process.
Sure. I think that's, I think customers are now expecting that kind of progress from fashion companies. So it's good to hear. There's another question that is coming from Jeff Lowndes in London. And he's asking about the designer mix of Moncler Genius. You know, what's made, I think, Moncler Genius so exciting for everybody, at least for me. I mean, when I came in February, and to be immersed in that space and to see all of these amazing designers, Jonathan Anderson and Craig Green, as we saw in the video earlier, is the designer strategy going to stay the same?
Yes, as you know, we changed a couple of designers every edition. We're going to have not yet decided, not yet signed contract, but I think we're going to have at least one or two very interesting designer came from different industries. That could be something new for our strategy. And I have quite a clear vision. You know, I try to find the best talent around the world, but they are able to talk with the different generation, different customer, different approaches. You know, we have Hiroshi, that is kind of a Japanese designer, Yoshi Fujiwara, that is more streetwear, but more very sophisticated. And we have Craig Green, that for me is one of the genius in the menswear. As well, we have this collection from Jonathan that was men and ladies. I think we can really change the jacket from one guys to another. I think, you know, very, very interesting what Genius is. I think we have to evolve as well but we have so great designer that for me is every season is not easy to say, I want to find another one.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, for me, that's one of the highlights of Moncler Genius. So I'm glad that's going to stay. I think we have time for one question. And actually, there's similar questions. One's come from Inga Gries in Germany, and the other question is from Frederick Court in London. And they're asking, how do you adapt a collection with an outdoor focus in a world where we're all forced to be indoors? And the way Inga's put it is, this is the outside winter meeting. Rather than stay and meet outside than inside. Like, are these things helpful or harmful to your business, that customer behavior is changing so much?
No, honestly, I think the world is very close to us. I think the future of the world is very hiking, is very going to the park, is very climbing the mountain, is very stay outside. For sure, not in this month. For sure, now we have lockdown. I don't think we're going to use much jacket, but I feel in the midterm, the people, they feel to go less in the city, more outside. I heard that a lot of my friends, they're looking for a house outside from Milano because they want to have the kids around the garden. My feeling is we're facing, I don't want to be too much optimist that I'm not, but my feeling is really that for us, the future is good really because the way to live will be different. I think the people, they would love more to go outside the city. I also heard from friends from LA that in the weekend they go, you know, in the park, Northern California, just to have another approach. I think that's why I think digital, talk with them through digital, not only to sell jacket, not only to make a digital commerce, but really to engage them, to sell them as well. You know, I think could be a big game for our industries. I think this is where to really change the speed.
Okay, well, with that, Remo, we have to end there, but I'm so grateful for your time today. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully, we'll get to catch up in person very soon.
Fantastic. Ciao, Imran. Thank you very much.
Ciao. Okay, well, now we move on to our next session. The unpaid internship has long been part of the fashion and design industries. And my friend Aaron Christian, whom I met outside the men's shows back in the days when we all gathered for physical fashion weeks, he shared a moving short film with me last year. And it shed a light on how one of the key entry points for new talent in fashion is just not an option for some people. The Internship is a film about race, class and privilege within the creative industries. It follows Josh, a young design graduate working in a dead-end job, and Josh has a chance meeting with his idol, a famous magazine editor, who offers him a prestigious but unpaid internship. But for Josh's family, the idea of unpaid work is incompatible with the everyday financial reality they live with. Please take a look.
The only thing that changes our life long term is when we raise our standards. We don't get what we want, we get what we need, what we have to have. Everyone's got lions as their profile picture. Everyone's a beast. Everyone's on beast mode. But the ones who are hunting down that vital content, the ones in the gym, the ones who are sweating, the ones who are making it happen, they don't have time to be Googling lion pictures. They're out there, they're busy. They're changing their lives.
Finished? Huh? Finished. I swear you spend too much time on these damn boxes, bro. Like, who's even gonna see this shit? It's a bloody stockroom card.
Listen, just give me a sec and I'll meet you out front, alright? Oh, wait, is that another pair of crepes?
You know me, cuz.
Gee, no offense, right? But why'd you even work here?
What are you talking about? The things, cuz. And obviously discount.
Discount?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Why you ask?
Nah, it's just, look, I swear, you've been here for a minute, yeah? You've not been promoted. Oh, that's a bit deep, cuz.
Yeah. 2 years. Real talk. Just here because Pop's wanting me to get a job. He's always on man's case.
Oh, sick. They got the new designer. Hey, do you want to roll through?
Yeah, man, not bothered.
You're basic, cuz.
How, man? This ain't basic.
Hey, man's got to school you.
Nah.
You've got to learn about real design, G.
Nah, this is real design,
Nah,
bro.
that's overpriced hype shit.
Wonderful, okay. Just make it happen. I trust your judgment.
Oh, shit, that's Jonathan Ames.
Cool.
Never heard of him.
No, the meeting.
He's rocking some new Prada, though. And the old father tech guy.
Bro, he's the editor at Designer. Don't worry. Do you think I should speak to him?
For what?
Well, I don't know, just like, introduce myself? I mean, you never know, right?
Wanted to get it for a while. Just wanted to pick up this book. It's, well, you know that the...
Excuse me, it's Jonathan, right?
Yes, that's correct. Sorry, no, it seems that somebody just recognized me. I'll be back soon, okay? I'll see you later. I'm sorry, you were saying?
I'm a huge fan of your work. Yeah, I've been a subscriber of Design Eye for years. I just, I wanted to introduce myself, really. And, well, I was wondering if you had any internships open at the moment, you know, at the magazine, or, you know, even in your digital department, because, you know, I know you're starting to do a lot more stuff online.
We do have regular internships, but they're highly sought after. It's great to see we have such a diverse readership. Why should we take you on?
Oh, because your digital department needs work. I mean, your print is great, and, you know, I love reading it. But your website screams we're a print magazine that just doesn't get digital.
What would you change about what we're doing now?
Well, I'd probably start by building a strong social team. Yeah, people that understand that world. Then I'd use those platforms to test out ideas, you know, like for bigger editorials, while blooding some new talent. You know, if they work and they get a good response, you can build on that. And if they don't, well, it's not a big loss. Just approach it as if you was a tech company, you know, fail in iteration.
Interesting perspective. Shoot me an email. It's on my website. I'll see what I can do. Actually, take my card, shoot me an email directly.
Yeah, boss. Let me get a photo for the gram. You know how it is, isn't it? Yeah? Come. All right, go. Yeah, safe for that, bro. I'm gonna shout you. All right.
Oh, you're so bait, bruv. You didn't even know who the hell he was.
Building the brand, fam. Building the brand.
Well, wait. What's your profile pic on?
Lion. Beast mode, bruv. In a bit, bro.
Safe.
Josh, come say hi. This is my eldest.
Hi.
Anne makes curtains. Maybe you should start a business with her, with your styling. Everyone's doing it now, you know. Kick it up. Give it a kick.
Kickstarter, Mum. Do you know what? I'm all right. But thank you. It's nice to meet you, Anne. Dad, that's for you.
So this is Indian food? Don't worry, not too spicy.
How was work?
Yeah, it was good, you know, same old. But I did have something quite interesting happen today.
Josh works in a fashion store in Shoreditch. He's one of the best stylists.
Really? I don't like fashion. Too many puffs for me.
So, Josh, you were saying?
Well, I bumped into the editor of, like, one of the UK's top design magazines today. And, well, I think he really took to me. He was actually a little surprised that I recognised him at first. Basically, I think I got an internship.
Great! Congratulations, Josh. It's amazing. Well done.
So what's the pay like?
Dad, it's an internship. So you don't get paid for it, but it's like, you know, one of the biggest magazines in Europe. You know, do you know how many people would kill for that internship?
So basically, they are going to get you to work for free, and you should be grateful. Not over the moon for it then, huh? Is that correct?
But Dad, like, hardly anyone gets looking at this place. So for him to actually give me an offer, you know, I'd like to think there was a real reason. I mean, you've always wanted a reason to be proud of us, right? So at least this is an opportunity to, you know, start something you can finally talk about.
The first Indian fashion designer.
Graphics, Mum, it's graphics designer.
Morning. This is delicious.
So how do you know they want you for your talent?
He said I'm better than some professionals.
Well, then they can pay you as a professional. I mean, these are rich luxury companies, and they can't afford to pay a youngster the minimum wage. They can piss off. The church are setting up a blog. Why don't you help with that? I mean, if you're not being paid, at least do something which is worthwhile, instead of making the rich people richer.
But Dad, I have to take this. Okay, it's the only real way I can get into this industry. If it's not me, then it's someone else.
Josh, I'm not saying you don't have talent and that you shouldn't go for this. If this editor offers you a job, fine. But until he does, I don't want you wasting your time.
I see you running into the woods with your bright yellow jacket. You look lost. You look lost.
Failure is a scary thing. I get it. But the first step in getting over and past that fear is acceptance. We already had, have, and always will possess the ability to achieve whatever we want. Everything we need is within us. Curiosity about life and all its aspects is still the secret of great creative people. Sometimes you just have to let things flow. You can't force your will on others or force motivation. It needs to come from them first.
He's waiting in the meeting room.
No problem. Tell him I'll be with him in 2 minutes.
Okay.
Hi, Jonathan.
Hi.
How's things?
Well, I just had a really promising young lad decline an internship.
I wouldn't worry about it. Perhaps it's time my son had a bit of a wake-up call. How about I get him in?
You went too far from home, ain't been to a city like this. Yeah, this town will crush you if you let it. I'm tired of watching you drown. You're breathing in too fast. Yeah, I could take your time. You ain't ready, no, you ain't ready. You're trying to run the ship that ain't set it. I would have shown you how you didn't let me. Said you don't want me to go down with this ship. I'm tired of watching you drown.
And now, welcome Aaron Christian to the BOF Voices studio here in Notting Hill. Thank you, first of all, for sharing your film with us. I remember when you sent the email to me, maybe about a year and a half ago.
Yeah, about that, I think.
And, you know, it just made me think a lot. And it made me think about you, actually, because as I mentioned in my intro, you know, we met very early on in your career when you were working for Mr. Porter and you were outside the shows. You know, what motivated you to create this film? It feels very personal.
Yeah. I think it was the first narrative short that I wanted to work on, and I think you always start from a place, a personal place when you're doing kind of narrative pieces. For me, it was both, so that the film's written with personal experiences from myself within the industry, but also a lot of experiences that I heard and listened to from really close friends within the industry. So I think it was an element of frustration that I felt as I was navigating the industry. And then there was also, I wouldn't say guilt, but because I was really lucky and privileged to be in the position that I was, how I got into the industry, and then seeing friends that I would say were like super talented that just didn't get those opportunities. So I felt there was a level of responsibility with all the kind of training and education that I got that I should actually give back to the community. And try to hopefully change how the fashion world is set up.
And what was the message you were trying to get across? The ending is a bit inconclusive.
Yeah.
But there's an implication in there that I wanted to go deeper on with you.
Sure. So I guess nepotism is one of the big themes, but I think when I was writing the script and trying to write the characters, I wanted to write them in a way that there wasn't just one specific villain, because I think the issues that we have in the industry, they're quite subtle and complex. It's layered. So I kind of wanted to show that the editor, for example, he is driven by really actually wanting to give Josh the opportunity and a chance, and he wants to kind of put talent forward. And then you've got like the father that has his specific problems, and Josh is kind of the tension, struggling to balance the family life and the career life. And I think it's just coming from a place, because I saw a lot of different, I kind of navigated the industry, and I think it was frustrating because when I got in, everyone was so nice. So for me, it was just like, there's something that needs to change in the industry, and I didn't really know where to vent that frustration. And essentially, I think it's the system. So I'm trying to kind of not point a finger, but highlight an issue that the system's a little bit broken and there needs to be a bit of change there.
Yeah. You know, for me, the biggest takeaway is, or was, what if?
Okay.
You know, those barriers to that kind of talent like Josh
Yeah.
didn't exist. What is the industry missing out in terms of potential?
Yeah.
You know, and I think the part of the diversity and inclusion conversation that I think sometimes gets lost is that there's so much creativity is everywhere. Creative people are in every community, in every part of the world. And although not all families or cultures necessarily nurture that creativity, you can find it everywhere. And so if we don't create paths and open doors for people who may not necessarily come from a family background where it's encouraged, we as an industry are missing out on potential.
100%. And I think there's a quote where it talks about creativity is abundant and talent is abundant, but opportunity isn't. And yeah, I totally agree. I'm always looking at solutions. So when I see there's a lack of diversity, I sometimes think, why wouldn't you want the biggest talent pool that you can kind of pull from? Because innovation and everything happens at the edges. So you're just giving your chance or your business more opportunity to innovate, and that can only be a good thing, I think.
Yeah. Well, Aaron, awesome film.
Thank you.
Awesome to see you in person.
And yourself. Thank you for being
Don't
here.
get to see that many people in person 2 meters apart.
2 meters.
But it's you know, it's a really powerful film, and I look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Thank you.
All right. Now, moving on to our next talk, this has been a year of firsts for women in leadership roles. Most recently, the election of Kamala Harris as Vice President-elect of the United States. And our industry has had some long overdue firsts as well. Samira Nasser is the new editor-in-chief of American Harper's Bazaar, the first Black woman to helm one of the most industry's important media titles. And Sinead Burke, who made her fashion industry debut at Voices 2017, is now the industry's leading disability advocate. In our next conversation at Voices 2020, led by two of our most formidable new leaders, we will continue to explore inclusion within the fashion industry. But first, here's a little refresher on Sinead's Voices talk from 3 years ago, which made everyone in fashion pay attention. I thought it was worth another listen.
I've spent my whole life trying to convince the world that I am intelligent, articulate, professional, and an adult. And yet, the fashion industry, unintentionally or not, does the absolute opposite and inverse by what it offers me. My friends who are non-disabled and not a little person say, oh, but it's great. You can get Velcro shoes and light-up runners. And they're tax-free. Okay, I'll take that one. But my money and my existence is as valid as yours. And yet I'm not accommodated for. I have had an insatiable interest in the fashion industry for as long as I can remember, despite having such limited access to it. But for a second, I want you to think. Visualize yourself in your favorite retail store. Can you feel yourself meandering through the rails, finding something to pick and buy? Well, this is my experience. As you can see, I'm not smiling. That's unusual for me. I walk into a store and I see something that catches my eye. I walk over to it. I can't reach. I can't find my size. I have to approach a stranger and say, hi, my name is Sinead. I'm really sorry. I really love this, orange mohair jumper. Do not judge. Can you please pass it down to me in a size 6? The stranger is kind as most are, and they give it to me. What's the next step? I go to the changing rooms. Wonderful. If it's a closed-door procedure, there's a lock. And usually I can't reach it. And if it's a curtain, I'm not strong enough to pull it across. So usually there's this slither of a gap that makes me an exhibitionist, even though my mother would be appalled. So I try it on, even though I'm uncomfortable in my surroundings. And the next step is I go to the till and the cash register. But the store is designed so that they can't see me. And understandably, those who work in retail are very frantic and have a lot to do and are shouting, "Next, please, next, please." All the while, I am embarrassed, mortified, standing right below them, hoping that another stranger goes, all I want to do is spend my money and look incredible. Now, thankfully, with the evolution of technology, that has offered a platform for accessibility. I can buy things wonderfully online, and they arrive via the postman. It's not glamorous, but we do what we got to do. But actually, unintentionally, what it has done is make those who are already vulnerable in society further reclusive, because we are saying, you are not welcome here. We haven't thought of you. We will take your money, but you don't get past the door. That's not good enough.
Who could forget that talk? Now I'm delighted to welcome Samira Nasser in New York in conversation with Sinead Burke, who joins us from the little town in Navan. Did I say that right, Sinead?
Navan, but close enough, Imran. You're welcome here at any time.
In County Meath in Ireland. Over to you, Sinead.
Thank you so much, Imran. I feel incredibly honoured to be sitting across digitally from Samira Nasser. I can remember viscerally the first time we met. It was in New York, in the Cooper Hewitt Museum of Design. We were both presenting awards to extraordinary people. Samira to Amy Sherald, the incredible artist, and I was presenting an award to Open Style Lab. I felt thrilled to be there, but more than anything, I wanted to go and say hello to Samira, to just occupy her space for a moment and tell her how much I admired her. She was busy conversing with somebody incredibly important, and I tugged on the sleeve of her jacket and I said, "Hello, you don't know who I am, but I think you're extraordinary." She responded with such kindness and humility, and I feel very honored to call her a friend and a mentor and somebody I admire ever since. In thinking about firsts, Imran, as you mentioned at the beginning, Samira now occupies a position that she is so deserving of, but is also a leader in an incredible industry. With people like Jacinda Ardern and Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, we are creating a new definition of leadership, one that is not so masculine, one that is not so authoritative, one that is rooted in creativity, empathy, and vulnerability. And I feel so very humbled to be facilitating this conversation with Samira today. Samira, how are you?
I'm well. I'm so happy to see you, and I'm so happy to be here. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
This is a joy. Samira, I describe you in my mind as lots of different things, but I'm really interested. How do you describe yourself personally and professionally?
Okay. Personally, mother. I am loyal. I am shy. I believe in leaving things better than you find them. I cherish my family and my friends. I love pretty things. Professionally, I would describe myself, I started as an intern, so I think I carry that mentality with me. I'm ambitious. I'm hardworking. I'm curious. I'm also very loyal. I believe that hard work and humility pay off. I thrive in teamwork, and I consider myself very lucky.
I think luck is that combination of hard work and opportunity. And often those of us who are minority voices in some way give luck a currency that it doesn't often deserve. So it is relevant too. I'm really interested that you describe yourself as a curious person. How do you harness and harvest your curiosity almost day to day?
I'm quiet. If I'm in a room with people, I'm generally very quiet. And that's not because I don't have anything to add to a conversation, but it's because I just like to be a sponge and absorb. And I think that's my curiosity. I like to explore. I like to get lost in daydreams. I like to read. I love knowing that I'm around people who know more than I do. You know, I'm always curious to learn. I think I will be a student for life.
I remember being in the classroom, and I remember a student raising their hand and asking me a question about something that was relevant to the curriculum, but I didn't know the answer. And I said it. I said, I don't know. And they looked at me really strangely. I said, what do you mean you don't know? You're the teacher. And I was like, yes, just because I'm a teacher doesn't mean I have all of the answers. And they said, but you're an adult. And I think when we think about people in leadership positions, we assume that they are all knowing, which is probably the rationale as to why we are in some of the challenging situations in which we are in now. And I love the idea that you're constantly curious and surrounding yourself with people who know more about different things than you do. But Samira, when you were younger, what did you dream of doing or being?
I mean, I knew I wanted to be a mom. I didn't really dream of a career until my university. I've always worked. I mean, I remember asking my dad, like, how old do you have to be get a job? And he said 16. And so I was like, cool, I can babysit before then. And then when I was 16, I went and got my first job in a store. I've always loved fashion. I've always had my head in a magazine. So, you know, I didn't really dream of a career. And as I discovered magazines, for me, it was like an escape, but I still didn't understand that that could be a job. Like you could actually, like there was someone creating that. I understood photographers and writers, but the idea of like an editor or a stylist or a creative director or even a photo or all the people that come together to make magazines, like that to me, I had no idea. I had no idea to dream about something like that because I just didn't know it existed.
Was that because of representation or a lack of visibility?
I think it's just information. You know, I you know, certainly if I think of myself in this role, if you had said to me, do you think one day, you know, when I understood what the role of editor-in-chief was, if you had said to me, do you think you'll be editor-in-chief of Harper's Bazaar one day, I would have said, Sinead, I love you, but it's not for me. And I think that's, you know, a lot to do with the fact that I've never seen anyone who looks like me in this role. And I think that I'm certainly not the first to be qualified for this job, you know, to look like me. And so that's why I would have never imagined that I would be the first to be appointed in this role.
Knowing that, how did you come to bring yourself to apply for the role?
I got a call from my now boss, who is a really wonderful woman, but I thought, why is she calling me? And then I thought, oh, here we go. Like, I'll just keep showing up for these interviews and these meetings, but it's just not going to be me. But I kept putting one foot in front of the other. And actually, I did it because I really enjoyed my conversations with her. And I really thought, wow, this is someone I could learn from. And I remember after our first conversation, I said, if this doesn't go anywhere, because I was pretty sure it wasn't going to go anywhere, can we just be in touch? Because I just thought, wow, she could really be a great mentor for me. And I just kind of followed the path and here I am.
And in terms of, you know, you said you always want to leave places in a better position than when they start or when they came into contact with you. Yeah. And you're 4.5 months into Harper's Bazaar. So I'm not asking you where and how you want to leave the magazine, but what's the impact that you want to have there?
I mean, you know, I think, gosh, the metrics for my success are, you know, and for your success, for all of our success, they're different metrics, right? Like there's the business side and meeting those metrics. There's the measure within our community and within our community who we feel like we're, you know, who thinks we're doing a good job. But there's also the idea of who I can inspire along the way, not only in terms of people who check the box, other thinking, wow, I could do that. I'm interested in that, but also the people who are the ones sort of the gatekeepers, you know, inspiring them to take chances on people who check that other box. So I think, you know, for me, the impact that I'd love to leave on this role is my predecessor had her signature and she created this incredible chapter in this brand's legacy. She was very effective. And I hope that I could live up to that. I hope that I could bring myself to this. I hope I can I hope to see more humanity in the pages of Harper's Bazaar. I hope to bring, I don't want to use the word diversity. I just, my world is very colorful. I just, my mother's from Trinidad, my father's from Lebanon, my stepfather's from China, my friends are, from all places around the globe. That's kind of the world that I live in. And so I just want to bring that to the work that I do. I always think that the best dinner parties are the ones, with more difference, like you don't want to be sitting next to someone that just shares your ideas and who you want to bring people together who have different ideas and different perspectives and see how that can all come together. And that's really something I'm hoping to do at Harper's Bazaar.
I think we need to reflect the wealth of diversity that exists in the people who read our magazines or who haven't yet discovered magazines are a place for them. And we need to do that both, as you said, in the humanity and the human experience that we share in the pages and in the teams that we build. And I think diversity has become a term that has gathered currency, particularly in recent times. And then we have tried to evolve and create new language because often the interpretation of diversity is one of tokenism rather than systemic change. So I think we're trying to create this new lexicon in a space where all we want is representation that moves beyond visibility while still acknowledges the importance of visibility, but that there is equitable opportunities. That, my goodness, isn't it so brilliant and so right, Samira, that you are in this role, because that's not about diversity, but it's about acknowledging the best people with the best perspectives who need to sit in these big offices rightly to shape the next direction as we move forward in publishing.
I mean, I always think that the only criteria for admittance should just be, a commitment to hard work and curiosity, right? Like that should just be it. And I think that, ultimately we use the word diversity because we haven't found another word, but, any kind of otherness, if anyone's ever experienced otherness, that's your superpower. That is your superpower. And that should be welcomed. We should be able to bring our full selves into these roles because those superpowers can only benefit creative teams, corporations. These are our strengths, and there's so much for our community to mine from admitting more people and sharing, inviting more people in to our community.
It offers a whole new perspective, and it's one that's been missing, and it's really important. And in thinking about that, in your first year of being editor-in-chief of the magazine, what do you want to accomplish? What do you want to do? How do you make this notion of bringing humanity to Harper's Bazaar? How do you make that real?
I mean, listen, I am just finding my way. I am giving myself space to try and fail. Trying to follow my instincts, bringing in people on my team. I get to hire people. So I get to hire people who have other perspectives and strengths that I don't have, and be able to learn from them and let them guide me where I don't know. So I guess in my first year, I'm just hoping to find my voice in this role and try things, really, and build my team.
And in thinking about that, building of your team, what are you looking for in colleagues?
Gosh, I'm looking for people who know more than I do in areas that I'm interested in that I think are relevant to our reader. When I met my features director, Caitlin Greenidge, she's a brilliant writer. And when we had our first meeting, I said to her, what stories move you? And she said, or what characters move you? What types of characters move you? And she said, I love characters with jagged edges. And I thought, oh, we're done here. We're good. You're my girl. Because that was the thing for me. I don't want that idea of perfection. And, she is a brilliant writer. She knows that community. I don't know that community, but there was a common thread. I also respond to imperfection and celebrating that because I believe that those are superpowers. And so in my tenure here, if I can communicate that to our readers and share that with our readers and our community at Harper's Bazaar, then that would be another success.
We talked earlier about gatekeepers and influencing gatekeepers. And whilst people like you and I get to hold positions of influence within an industry now, there are still other individuals that we have to influence. And that sounds like a bizarre concept, particularly in this moment with all that has happened this year, especially in the US. But how do we influence those individuals who still want to maintain a sense of what the status quo is?
I don't know if this is, I really believe you just put your head down and do the work, Sinead. I believe just by being here, we are part of a shift. I believe that progress does not happen overnight. I believe it's slow. I believe in slow and steady wins the race. And I think we've already won. I'm not worried about those gatekeepers, right? Because you in your role, you are affecting change and you get to make decisions. Similarly, in my role, I'm not going to worry about the person down the block who refuses to be an agent of change. That's cool. History will be fine with you. Not. I'm going to worry about, the people that I can bring on board and the change that I can affect. I think there's this expectation that this has to be immediate, that we're in this moment, we're in this cultural reckoning, and we have to address it now. There are certain things that we can do now and we can be effective at, but you're here and I'm here. We're at Business of Fashion Voices. I mean, this is wild. This is incredible. So I feel like just lead by example, put your head down, do the work, and show people.
The pandemic has, I think, taught many of us lots of things. For me, it's given me an opportunity to reconfigure my compass, particularly when I think about work. Imran opened this session by quoting the extraordinary Kamala Harris. I've been really fortunate that I've managed to move myself from an industry of education and advocacy to positioning myself really deliberately in fashion. I've been fortunate that I have been welcomed despite nudging those doors open myself. But this year has really caused me to ask, has the industry changed, or has the industry just changed for me? What is measurably different since that talk that I got to give in 2017? Great, maybe there is more awareness, but change is not good enough if it is only just change for me. And really, I've begun to kind of measure and try to create a process where that systemic change happens, because it's so easy in some ways to be conditioned by the rhetoric of change, if that makes sense. That when you then move into a position of influence that I have, that you have, we unintentionally then become gatekeepers to others, gatekeepers to people who I am much more privileged than them. And I wonder what do you think is the way in which we can guard ourselves to ensure that we don't become conditioned by the system?
I mean, I just don't think that's in your DNA, and I know that it's not in mine. I trust that, I was raised a certain way. I carry that with me every day. It's not like, oh, I'm in the door and I close the door now. Like, that's just not how I've ever operated. So I don't, I think you should give yourself more credit. And I certainly trust that, I'm aware that whenever I had the opportunity to welcome someone in, I've always worked to bring people on board and invite people in. And that's who I am. That's who you are, and I do think it's healthy though. And it's important. And you raise an important point. I think it's really healthy to reflect on our success and how have we been able to impact people? Who have we been able to help? That's important, but I don't feel this weight of like, let me count the numbers and let me make sure that I'm held accountable, because I think that's who we are. That's how
it becomes mechanical, but it has to be a deliberate act, that piece of inclusion. It's not something that just happens automatically. Samira, we are coming really close to time, but I wanted to ask you one final question. Okay. We are in a pandemic in the hope that a vaccination might be coming soon. You are editor-in-chief of Harper's Bazaar. What gives you hope?
This conversation, my son, I just think this time has taught us how to be so nimble You know, the current cultural reckoning, the conversations we are having now, these all give me tremendous hope. I mean, it's undeniable. The future is bright. We're all going to be okay.
Thank you so much, Samira.
Thank you
Imran,
so
I'm going to
much.
hand it back to you in studio.
Wow, I'm just sitting here on my little orange sofa and I felt like I was listening in to just like a beautiful conversation between friends. And as I'm, so fond of both of you and so happy to see you kind of having the impact, thank you so much for being here today. That was really, really special. We've had a lot of questions come through from the audience, but Samira, I wanted to selfishly ask you one question because as you started talking about the colorful life you lead and, it made me think of Canada. And both you and I were born and raised in Canada. And I'm curious, to what extent has your worldview been shaped by growing up in a multicultural, harmonious society like Canada?
This is such a great question, and it has meant everything. It has been, it never occurred to me, Imran, that I couldn't participate. It never occurred to me that I couldn't participate until I was in the room in my first job in the US. And I experienced racism for the first time in that sort of environment. And I kind of had this moment of like, oh my God, I am not supposed to be here. And I think that growing up in Canada was a huge blessing because it just wasn't a thing. It just wasn't a thing. I was aware of my differences, but it just wasn't a thing. And I grew up in a really white suburb outside of Montreal, and it's still just, I don't know. It's the way we're raised in Canada and the way we're taught about cultures and otherness. I think it's different. And so that was a huge, huge blessing for me. Because I wonder if, had I grown up here, if I would have just stopped myself from even trying.
Yeah, no, I feel so much the same way. That, just being in a place like Canada, which admittedly every country has its challenges, and Canada has, issues with the way we've treated Aboriginal Canadians for years, and it's not a perfect place, but in the grand scheme of things, I feel so grateful to have grown up there.
Yeah.
So you were talking about otherness being a superpower.
Yep.
And one of our questions here is from Ivan in Singapore, and he's asking you, may you please explain how imperfection or otherness is a superpower? I'll give you both a chance to answer, but Samira, why don't you go first?
Okay. Thank you for that question. I think that if you've experienced otherness, you have to, on a very basic level, when you enter a room, you have to enter it differently. You have to find your way in. If you've experienced otherness, you've had to develop other skills. If you've experienced otherness, you have a direct dial into humanity and to seeing people, really seeing people. And those are superpowers. My son has significant learning differences, and he will likely outgrow them. We don't know. But as I watch him grow, I realize that these are his superpowers. What he lacks in his ability to, when he speaks, he is so connected to people emotionally. He can walk into a room, look at someone and know if they're upset, happy, like he can read a room already. And I think that will serve him later in life. He sees individuals. And so I think that instead of, wanting to be like everyone, we should learn, and this is something that should be taught and celebrated, we should be celebrating people's differences because they are bringing something new to the table and to the conversation. And they are spidey senses. They are enabling us to tap into something that is maybe not common, and it's a gift.
Okay. Sinead, is there anything you would add?
Gosh, I would echo so much of what Samira says, and I completely agree when she talks about her son. We have such a routine of trying to fix people or trying to ask people to contort themselves into a mold that we have defined as the norm. And we shouldn't be requesting that. We should be encouraging people to say, don't change who you are in order to fit in. Let's change the world to fit you, because we have designed the world to exist like this. Cultures and physical spaces are created and manifested in this way over time. As a disabled woman, I describe myself as organized, creative, and articulate. And those are three characteristics that are inextricably linked to my disability. I am an extroverted introvert, which means I'm actually at my most comfortable when I am quiet with a book on my own. The longer you get to know me, the quieter that I become. But my disability has made me be an extrovert, or has given me permission to do so. I'm organized because inaccessibility is so much a part of my life that I spend all of my days wondering about the accessibility of that public bathroom, or how will I get to that place, which means I map out my timeline in advance. I'm creative because I'm constantly problem solving in order to just do what you don't even think about. And articulate, I have spent my entire life asking for help. So it means that I can sit across from the editor-in-chief of Harper's Bazaar and have a conversation as if that's a totally normal thing to do, which it is not. But I wouldn't be able to do any of these things if I wasn't disabled. And I think, exactly as Samira says, we have been so blinkered to the challenges of identity that we don't see the opportunities that exist with it.
Okay. So, Sinead, there's a specific question from Darcy. I'm not sure how to pronounce the surname, Darcy Surgison in London. And Darcy asks, how would you suggest that brands can represent disability more accurately and widely in media and the fashion industry? How can casting agencies ensure that disability and diversity is represented without tokenism?
I think this is such an important question. I think the pandemic has provided opportunities to think about accessibility and the inclusion of disabled people in a really meaningful way. There has been some successes in that, but few. How are we thinking about the creation of digital spaces and events through captioning, through including alt text, which is what those who are blind need to be able to interact with that content? For casting agents, I think it's really important that as we move forward, and this approach is important for the fashion industry as a whole, that we don't think about accommodating for disabled people within a specific capsule collection, or specifically disability-focused agency, because in our attempts to be inclusionary, we're actually being othering, because we are saying that this is for you, instead of realizing that the accommodations that disabled people require will actually have benefit for everybody. What can casting agents ask? They can ask about accessibility accommodations from the outset. They can provide details and guidelines on set so that those who have autism, or those who have learning disabilities, or those who have chronic illness or chronic disease can have the accommodations that they need in order to be themselves in those spaces. We can also create inclusion riders. So for example, if you are at a publication or a brand or an agency, you can say that we are going to divest our resources to ensure that 25% of our issues this year will include disabled people within them, be that visible or invisible disabilities. It is not good to say that we need mandates in order for progress to occur, but if we are going to wait until it is the right thing to do, or until people's awareness is nuanced enough to understand the variety that is required within this work on diversity, we're just going to be waiting too long. So I think there are small things we can do immediately, but as Samira so brilliantly said, progress doesn't happen overnight.
Okay. You know, just before your talk, we showed the film The Internship by my friend Aaron Christian, and Samira, you said that you started actually in the fashion industry as an intern. So there's two layers of this next question. One, what role do internships play now in the fashion industry, and how do they maybe need to change from the time that maybe you started? And number two, there's a lot of people here asking, you know, when you're hiring someone, Samira, what do you look for in a CV? What are you seeking to find?
Okay, well, I'll start with the first question about internships. We have done away with them because of a lot of, for many reasons. And I think what this whole climate and moment has it has reignited the conversation around the need for internships. We need to create to bring back internships and mentorship, because that is a way to, develop people and it creates a hiring pool. So I'm hoping, and I'm very much looking forward to getting back to internships. I believe they should be paid, or I believe they should be for credit.
Were you paid?
Nope, was not paid.
No.
Was not paid. But what I don't believe should change about internships, and this could be very controversial, I had to get coffee. I got dry cleaning. I did a lot of crappy things that, I'm 2 degrees later, not sure, might be overqualified to be doing this right now. But you know what? Work ethic. It taught me things. 1 minute was getting someone a cappuccino or picking up someone's dry cleaning, but the next minute I was on set watching an incredible photographer and editor work. So it's a trade-off, and that experience was invaluable to me. And so I'm hoping we can get back to internships. The question about resumes and CVs, I look for, I don't necessarily look for someone who has studied fashion or has a degree in any kind of, I love anyone who has studied history or art or just has a curiosity beyond the industry. And for me, it's not so much the resume as it is the person when you meet them. Like, do you get that sense that they are hardworking, that they're curious, that they, if I ask them, I usually ask them, like, who are your favorite designers and photographers, that they have an answer to that because they've studied and they have a sense of what the industry is about.
Okay. Well, that's very good advice from 2 incredible women. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
I hope to see you both in person sometime soon. But honestly, this felt like just sitting with you here. So I'm really grateful for your time. And I wish you both an amazing holiday season if we don't get to speak before then.
Thank you, Imran, and congratulations. This is such a success.
All right, thank you.
Congratulations and thank you. Thank you, Sinead.
Thanks, Samira.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Okay, now it's time to change gears a bit. Let's skip back a year to before COVID-19 stopped the whole world and the fashion industry in its tracks. During a runway show in Miami around this time last year, Kim Jones, artistic director of Dior Men's Collections, unveiled the Air Dior shoe. He brought together 3 formidable brands for the first time: Dior, Nike, and Air Jordan brand, in a reinterpretation of the Air Jordan 1, considered by many to be the most important sneaker design in history. That alone would have made it an important fashion story in 2020. But, of course, there's more now. Originally, the shoe was meant to launch in mid-March and roll out in pop-ups all around the globe. But of course, coronavirus put paid to that, and the launch had to be delayed to July 1st. It was pared back to just 2 pop-ups, one at Selfridges, as on the screen here in London, and the other at the Taikoo Li shopping mall in Chengdu, China. The shoes, available in low tops and high tops, cost $2,000 and $2,200 US respectively. But still, in just 9 hours, more than 5 million people signed up for the draw for 8,500 pairs of shoes, and the remaining 5,000 pairs were reserved for Dior's top clients globally. In hindsight, the extended wait for the Air Dior might have actually boosted demand for the shoes themselves. And when I checked over the weekend, a size 7 pair of high-top Air Diors was selling for more than $25,000. Almost unheard of for a new sneaker, especially amid a once-in-a-century pandemic and economic crisis. This makes the Air Dior undoubtedly the most successful product launch in a very unusual year that 2020 has been. Some quick back-of-the-envelope math suggests that the 2 models of the Air Dior sneakers alone generated more than $26 million in primary revenue and probably millions more in secondary revenue on resale sites. So to unpick the success of the Air Dior, I sat down with Kim Jones a week or so ago to get the inside take on the making of Air Dior. Hello, Mr. Kim Jones.
Nice to see you.
How are you?
I'm really good.
It's been a crazy 8 months or so.
It's been crazy, but it's been busy.
Yeah.
And I've appreciated time at home and being able to have time to myself and reflect on what I've done and start my new job as well at Fendi. So a lot of time to research and prepare and be excited about things.
Yeah, a very eventful few months. But today we're here to talk about sneakers.
Yes.
What makes an amazing sneaker and what makes an amazing sneaker launch. And you know, the Air Dior shoe, which we have right here, it's like, you know, the most sought after sneaker in the world right now.
Yeah.
I've been scouring the internet to kind of see what people are saying and how much they cost, and you know, it's crazy how quickly they've accelerated in price. So I wanted to start with your own, you know, relationship with sneakers, because it goes back a long time. This is not a trend you just jumped on.
No, I mean, most people that know me know that I started out working at a company called Gimme 5 while I was at college. But before that, when I was a student and also when I was at school, Nike for me was the absolute must-have. And you know, I'd save up and dishwash and do things like that so I could go and buy a pair of sneakers. And you know, people like Michael Jordan were the heroes, and just everyone was wearing sneakers. And you know, me and my friends would chip in to buy pairs to share them. And I think
to share a pair of
yeah,
sneakers.
I mean, a pair of Jordan 5s that were on discount in a place in Brighton that we bought. We went 3 ways on them. I think they're £45, and we chipped in to buy them. And then we'd take them in turns to wear them, and obviously make sure no one stood on them and took care of them. Never allowed to go out, you know, anywhere dirty in them. And it was just, you know, it's the design. It was just like, you know, it was a cult thing. It became a cult, and you know, I know that we both got these, which are one of the first pairs of the Jordans in the white and grey, which is the basis for the Air Dior. And the Air Dior thing was really. There's a guy in my studio called Thibaut, and I've had a contract with Nike for quite a few years, and then they talked to me about doing a Jordan, and I was like, I'd really love to do it with Dior, because they've never done a luxury house with Jordan collaboration. So I thought, well, let's make an Italian you know, Jordan with the Dior factories, and really make something special and exciting. And it's really, you know, it was so I could wear a pair of Dior Jordans. That was really how it started. It was a bit selfish.
So before we get into the actual kind of design of the shoe, because I think there's a lot of thought that goes into that, of course, you know, the Jordan 1, for like the uninitiated amongst us, I think, you know, sneakerheads call it the AJ1.
Yeah.
Why is that such an important shoe silhouette?
I think it's just such a design classic. And for me, you know, there's periods in Nike's history where there's been shoes that have come out like this or the Air Max 95 that just speak to people, and they speak to a generation of people. And for me, I didn't have the original pair of these because I was a bit too young for them, and they were really out of my price range, and they weren't so easy to get in the UK. And then as I sort of started going to Japan, as I graduated, I started collecting pairs. Or I'd find them in a flea. I think the first pair I bought were $7 in a flea market in Oakland when I went to visit a friend when I was a student, and that was kind of, you know, and it was just, oh my god, you got shaky and excited, and they just become a fetish item, you know. You just love the design. It's like joining a club, I guess.
So when you're thinking about, you know, designing a shoe that has to balance effectively 3 different brands, right?
Yeah.
You know, Jordan is its own brand now.
Exactly.
Completely, you know, operated separately with its own team. Then there's Nike, which obviously has like gave birth to the Jordan.
Yeah.
And there's Dior. Those are like 3 iconic brands. So when you're designing a shoe, and you have to balance the DNA of 3 brands.
Well, these was really like, we knew that it had to be made in Italy because that's one of the criteria of Dior. It's made in Italy or France. We knew the leather had to be sourced. We knew we wanted to have the finishings made like, you know, a Dior bag would be made. So you have the edge painting, you have the way that things are hand finished in the sewing. The oblique here is made for a specific size just for the Jordan, and it's scaled per size of Jordan. And you have it on the tongue, which is a new technique that we developed, and inside you have the leather sole unit inside, which they don't have in the normal Jordan. And then inside it had the numbers, or these are the ones from the Miami show, which there were literally like 40 pairs of them, and really making them for people that would appreciate something and understand the craft. Because I think a lot of people now in consumption, when you talk about fashion, I'm very aware of numbers and craft being important to people. I think young people are learning they want to buy less and they want to buy things that last longer. For me, doing things like this was something, you know, it's a limited number of things, but it creates excitement.
Yeah, I mean, I read that there were only 13,000 pairs of the shoes made. But there was also a whole bunch of other SKUs in the collection, which maybe didn't get as much
Yeah, I mean,
attention.
we looked at Michael Jordan's wardrobe when he was, you know, because he was the coolest guy, and it was like he wore suits all the time, and you know, and we were looking at what, you know, we made mood boards of his clothes, and then we had to go and present it all to him, which was kind of like,
really,
yeah, because he sees everything and approves everything for Jordan.
What was that like?
I mean, he was super lovely, and then I met him again in Chicago when we went to do the launch of it, and it was like, I was really impressed that he remembered who I was, to be honest. That's the sort of, you know, kid's dream, isn't it, I guess. And you know, he was just really enthusiastic, and he wanted to keep some of the stuff, so we let him keep it. And Travis was there, and he was really into it. So, you know, I promised Travis he'd be one of the first people to have it, and it was just, you know, it was an appreciation for each other. I think that was the thing that was nice about it.
And then what did you have to say to the powers that be at Dior to get them? I mean, they've never done something like this before.
I went to Pietro, who's my CEO, and, you know, we have an extremely good relationship. And then I spoke to Alex Sarno, and I was like, I really want to do this. What do you think of it? And, you know, he's in his mid-20s, and thought it was like the coolest idea. He grew up, his hero is a basketball player, so that was pretty easy to do. Nike was a little bit harder, but then they got there, you know, they got into it too. And it was just really managing the expectations of everybody in the right way, including the customer, you know, making sure that the raffle system couldn't be bugged by, you know, people wanting to resell straight away, because that's something that I can see frustrates people when they're buying things and want things. So, you know, we spoke to James at Supreme, who's the master of that, and, you know, we had a good network of people around to try and make it like that. But, you know, then things, you can't always control all of that. And, you know, you see things, you know, one pair was stolen from the show in Miami. I think they were sold for something like 55,000, even though there was security on every single pair. You know, when it was being packed up, that happened. But, you know, someone had a nice time with their money doing that. You know, I think that's how things go.
A lot happened since that launch in Miami, right? So, you know, that was last December.
Yes.
Pre-COVID, pre-lockdowns, pre-massive global economic crisis. How did the changes that happened in the world impact the way you and Pietro were thinking about taking the shoe to market, and the way Jordan brand got involved?
Well, we delayed it until it was, you know, an appropriate time, also that was safe in most places around the world for people to be able to go and do it. You know, obviously it hasn't been safe, but, you know, when it's been less problematic, or very much with the, you know, making schedules in the stores for people to go and collect the shoes at separate times, so that social distancing is respected and things like this. And, you know, I think generally I've had, and I do read feedback on Instagram and things, I've had really positive comments from customers and consumers saying, you know, this was handled really well, thank you. You get a few people that don't, but I like to make sure the customer's happy, because a happy customer will come back, you know, essentially. And it's like, you know, I interact with a lot of people that buy, you know, clothes and things that I work on, and, you know, I think about the kids that save up their money, and you want them to have the chance as well, because, you know, I was the kid that saved up their money to buy something as well.
Yeah, but these shoes were exceptionally expensive to begin with,
Yes.
right? So as you know, you know, the model of luxury is usually that, you know, you have this kind of super high-end product that everyone aspires to, and then, you know, that desire trickles down to other products. Could you imagine, you know, a wider release, or, you know, a broader, more broadly available shoe that was more accessible from a price standpoint?
Well, we were talking about the potential of a second idea of that, but that's not, at the moment, that's not in discussion purely because of what's happening on in the world.
Yeah.
And, you know, at the moment I'm focusing on Dior because, I mean, we've had a very good year, thankfully, because people are loyal customers. I couldn't be luckier in that sense, but I'm aware it's been extremely tough, and, you know, we've also looked at the way we design and how things go to market, and, you know, we've had very good online sales. I don't know if you online shop. I don't online shop so much. I like the shopping experience just because it's kind of fun. And I do, you know, one of the things I do when I go around the world is I love to go shopping in other countries, particularly Japan, which
me too.
I'm really missing. It's like they always have the sizes you can't get anywhere else. It's
exactly.
Like, so it's kind of, you know, but I just, you know, I was aware it was an expensive thing, and, you know, I did actually, you know, I have godchildren and friends that have children, and, you know, I bought them all pairs for Christmas, and that was like, you know, that was like so not, and they give me the information I need on, you know, what's cool in the market, because they're the kids that are there, you know.
Yeah, so what is cool in the market? This whole like streetwear meets luxury space has just exploded in the last few years. Where do you see that going?
I just see, you know, it's like, when it, you know, I always think of you as quite a formally dressed guy, but then you're wearing Comme des Garçons Air Forces.
Yeah.
And it's just the mix of comfort and easiness in daily life, I think. You know, I love wearing a tailored coat and tailored pants, but then the rest of my, you know, it's either knitwear or a jersey piece, and it's just, because when you're working, quite often when it's with your hands, it's like easy. So I have a uniform that I work with, but people like to mix things up. I think it's just this thing, you know, and also, you know, people recycling things and customizing things. You know, there's a lot of things going forward, and like, you know, when I do wardrobe clear outs, which is quite often, you know, all my friends' kids come over and they help me tidy up everything, and then go home with bags full of stuff, and it's like, you know, and it's just interesting to hear what they say about things, because that's the future generation of people buying, and I'm always interested in that.
Yeah, it's so interesting to talk to that generation about buying, you know, vintage or renting clothes. You know, when I grew up, you know, going to a vintage store was a bit, you know, looked down upon. We had this place in Calgary where I grew up called Value Village, and you could get the best, like, denim Levi's that were worn out the perfect way, and my parents thought it was crazy that I would go there.
Yeah.
But it's become such a part of the way young people shop, I think, for two reasons. One, because you can get something that nobody else has, and two, it's just more sustainable, right?
Yeah.
So as someone who's like now creating objects, products, clothes that might not be just for one customer, that might live for a long time, does that change the way you think about designing clothes?
Not at all. I like the fact that, you know, it's like there's quite a few people that have grown up, you know, from when I graduated, that have gone from being a Kim Jones customer that was a young kid to being now a Dior customer via Dunhill and Vuitton, etc. And, you know, like quite often when I'll give someone a coat and then they're like, oh, my son really loved that coat, so I've given it to him. You know, he's walking around in a really nice top coat, and I think that's kind of cool. And I like the idea of things handed down through generations. I think, you know, the thing about luxury that I like is it's clothes that are built to last, and there's not that many made of things. And so, you know, I care about the world a lot, so it's something that I do consider that there's not much waste in terms of, we don't have tons of stock left over, we don't have massive amounts of things made. It's made in an area, you know, in Europe, everything's produced in an area where we know it is, and it's like, so, you know, kids want to know that, and, you know, they will ask me, where's this from, where's that from, and I'll ask those same questions, and I think it's just, you know, social duty, really.
Amazing that you've managed to kind of channel so many of your passions through the work you do. At Fendi, is there an angle as well?
There is, but I can't talk about that yet.
All right.
I'm not allowed to talk about that until I've done a show.
Okay.
But yeah, the first show is very personal.
Okay.
But it's respecting the past.
Okay.
Because I love Sylvia as well, so, you know, that's someone that wanted me to be there, so I'm very happy to be there. and it's fun to do two things.
Okay. We have lots of young people watching, probably look up to you.
Yeah.
And either they want to be designers or they want to be artists, or they, what advice or wisdom would you share with them about being able to realize and pursue your passions?
Never think about the money. Think about doing the job. Work hard. Don't think about social media. Think about the actual reality, and just get on with it. And ask questions. I ask questions all the time, and that's how I've learnt so much. And I always ask questions whenever I see my CEO or anyone I find interesting. I want to know as much as possible about them.
Okay, well, that's good advice.
Cool.
Give me an elbow bump.
Thank you. We're lovely to see you.
Well, a product launch like the Air Dior is just one example of how the fashion industry is changing the way it thinks about its direct engagement with customers. We'll have a lot more on that in tomorrow's session on reinventing retail. But brands that fall under the protective umbrella of big luxury groups could afford to wait out the crisis, delay their events and product launches, and pivot to digital sales while their stores were closed. However, it wasn't that easy for many independent brands whose businesses are heavily dependent on wholesale revenue, income that was pummeled by the crisis as orders were canceled and factories were shut down. Shortly after the lockdowns began, two virtual groups of independent designers formed organically. They met on weekly Zoom calls. Rewiring Fashion, facilitated by BOF, and The Forum, led by the designer Dries Van Noten. A few months later, within a few days of each other, both groups published manifestos encouraging the industry to think differently. In an attempt to preserve the vitality and creativity of independent businesses, they made strong arguments regarding changes to the fashion calendar, rampant discounting, and the purpose of fashion shows. Listening to those conversations was a defining moment of the crisis for me. For the first time, designers were openly sharing their challenges, frustrations, and worries about the future of their businesses. And they were also helping each other, sharing knowledge and market intel. In an industry that's traditionally valued keeping up appearances over open exchange and vulnerability, this was something new, something I'd never seen before in fashion. So today we're excited to announce that going forward, Rewiring Fashion and The Forum are now joining forces. It's another step in collaboration. And so for an update on progress and the work that remains to be done, I'm pleased to introduce three of the leaders in this movement to build a better fashion industry. Anya Hindmarsh, who's here with me in the Voices studio in London, Stefano Martinetto, who's the head of Tomorrow, and Dries Van Noten, who joins us from his studio in Antwerp, Belgium. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
I have a lot to ask you, but before we get underway, I'd just like to remind our viewers to submit their questions too, which I'll come to afterwards so we can pose them to our esteemed guests. So I want to start this by asking a very specific conversation about these groups that had formed during the pandemic. And Dries, maybe we'll start with you. What was the most important thing that you learned as part of being in the forum and having those conversations on a weekly basis with all the retailers and independent brands?
It was a very big change for us because it was a very open discussion. So our group of people was really existing was kind of a cross-section of the fashion industry. There were retailers, there were e-commerce people, there were kind of fashion show people who organized fashion shows. There was a PR company involved. So we had a very good cross-section. And what was really like the most new thing for us, that there was very open discussion. People of big department stores discussing, in fact, how they could cope with COVID, if the stores could reopen, all those type of things. So the openness was really the biggest change. Once we started the discussion, of course, for us, the main issue to change something that definitely in fashion was changing the sales dates and to avoid that summer clothes were delivered in winter and winter clothes delivered in summer. So that was for us the main topic, but we started to work on.
Okay. Stefano, let's go to you. For you, What was your main learning from being part of Rewiring Fashion?
Well, clearly the openness and the transparency with which every member of the panel discussed their problems and the issues. All of a sudden we realized that an entire generation of independent designers were endangered, relying on wholesale business. All of a sudden there was no market out there for them. So how to sort out the situation, basic problems, inventory, cash flow. It was wonderful to see the more expert among the panel to contribute with their knowledge. It was incredibly to remember and remind everyone that we are here for the creativity and craftsmanship, and probably slowing down the entire industry is a good solution to look at a brighter future.
Okay. Anya, how about you?
Well, I mean, I think the collaboration, I think we all felt that was really powerful, actually. And I think obviously you solve problems by not just thinking about yourself, but collaborating as an industry. And I think we all felt that. I think what was exciting was that we all have the same challenges, whatever sector or, you know, accessories are slightly different, but everyone has the same issues. And I think there was a power to coming together, actually, and sharing those problems and realizing we could actually affect change. And that was really exciting. And I think, as Dries said, the overriding issue that we were trying to discuss, and I think everyone was sort of aligned, is the sort of the shift in the dates that's happened, as in the discount periods have moved forward. And it's sort of caused a bit of chaos, honestly, not only for brands, but for customers and for the planet. So I think we were all aligned in what we were trying to achieve.
Okay. Let's break down one by one some of the things that have come up. I wanted to start with the wholesale model, you know, and so around the time of the lockdowns, a lot of the designers that I was hearing from were not getting positive messages of support from wholesalers. And this is after years of the wholesale model being broken, the sales that were happening in some of the US department stores and some of the online players. So, you know, I'll throw this one to you first, Anya. You know, what is the future of wholesale, or the role of wholesale in our industry now, when it's so easy for us to reach customers directly?
Well, I think, you know, probably the play is much more direct. That's probably is a big chunk of the future. Wholesale still has a very important role. They have a very sort of engaged local customer base. They've been a long time in the market. They can amplify what you're doing in a brilliant way. And when you partner with a wholesale store or partner, you can really make a big difference. It's really exciting, I think. So there's still absolutely a role. I think there is going to be a cull, honestly. I think there's going to be, as we're seeing, honestly, at the moment. And I think that with COVID, we are absolutely sort of suffering from the pandemic, but there is also, this is sort of a number of problems that have come together, which perhaps has accelerated some changes, as we've seen. So it's still really relevant, but there's a change, and I think the fact that you can now go much more direct to a customer allows you to frankly, sort of dictate a bit more on your dates, and you don't necessarily have to kind of go with the rules of wholesale. So it puts the power a little bit on the other foot, I think. And on the whole, my experience was pretty actually positive. Throughout this, talking to our partners, and we'll talk about dates, but we've made some big changes to our timetable, and everyone was very supportive, actually. But one of the issues, of course, was that we normally have an export guarantee insurance. So when we ship something, we're insured, and a lot of those insurances fell away, which was quite a challenge.
Dries, you made the unusual decision mid-pandemic to open a retail store, which in Los Angeles, which I think speaks a little bit to the way you're thinking about your business. But, you know, going forward, post-pandemic, how does the Dries Van Noten business think about working with the wholesale clients?
I think we need definitely the perfect combination. We need a combination of online, which I think is going to be more and more important in the future. But for me, online can only exist when you have, besides that, also a very good, solid way of showing in brick and mortar store your collections. Can be your monobrand stores, can be our own stores, like the one that we have now in LA. But I think also, for me, there is a very strong future in multi-label stores. Quite often now, you feel that there is kind of new energy there. Already before the crisis started, you feel that there is in less expensive neighborhoods, you have young people who start to do a very personal take on fashion, and very personal selection, something which is very curated. And in that way, for me, the three elements really can go hand in hand. You have those more smaller boutiques, you have the existing, the big department stores, which of course stay important. We have our own stores, but that in combination with the online. But I think we have to review also what the brick and mortar store can be, because I think just showing clothes and that's it, forget it, that's not going to work anymore. I think you can have the same experience and much more practical than on e-commerce. So I think we have to offer different things. So we have to tell a story. We have to tell really to show why the clothes are more expensive than high street labels. We have to give kind of a full package of support to people who come to the store, to explain them and to tell them a beautiful story, and that they fall in love with the product and with the garment or with an accessory what we show to them.
Okay. Stefano, you work with a lot of young designers, and maybe their experience with the wholesale model during this period, I mean, how did it work out for them?
Well, it's obviously extremely challenging. I echo Dre's unusual decision. We invested into a retail store over the lockdown, Machiné in Soho. The notion that wholesale is dying is most appropriately defined as bad wholesale is dying. When you have a curation, when you have a personal relationship, when you have a local retailer who actually knows their customers, an art gallerist who curates a selection of artists, I like to define them, well, that's certainly a moment of connection, curation, relationship, which will be thrived. Nobody selling to Machiné or to the Broken Arm, for example, feels that wholesale is dying. Like I'm not feeling that going to my local fishmongers is outdated.
What about these like really big wholesale clients, the big online players that started discounting, you know, very early, like the big American department stores? I mean, these are the kinds of companies that dominate the wholesale market.
Yes and no. Yes and no. For independent designers, these the online stores, the larger, big online stores are dominating. The big department stores are not, and haven't for quite a long time. I'm a big fan of having a rational approach to the business and looking the flow of the money. We know that a couple of online stores are particularly relevant for independent designers. Essence, for example, or My Theresa. What do these two retailers have in common? Relentless talent scouting and support for independent designers, and full price sales, a larger portion of full price sales. We have been following the wrong mission of selling stuff, overselling stuff, producing more stuff, dropping product in the season where the customer wasn't interested. Would you buy a down jacket in May or April? Probably not, unless you have a trip. So we have to go back to the drawing board, rethink the entire cycle, give space to creativity. No, you can't ask a designer to come out with 6, 8, 9, 10 collections a year, because that's a factory, that's cookie cutting, is not allowing them to express themselves. Probably less collections, more time to develop the product, less product, delivered in the right seasonality is also a viable future for a quality wholesale.
Okay. We've touched on discounting a couple of times already, and it was a real bugbear for Dries in particular, the kind of discounting calendar. Dries, are you happy with the progress that's been made thus far around discounting dates? You know, I mean, Stefano alluded to part of the problem, which was like overproduction, and you know, everyone had too much stuff, and they started, you know, trying to get rid of it early. But do you feel like we've made some progress in this discounting issue?
I think there is really clearly an evolution there, and I think always like we have to be careful. It's not going to be a revolution. It's not going to change from one season to another, especially now that everybody's in a very fragile financial situation. So, and we also said we don't want to become the fashion police, checking if everybody follows the rules what we make, because I think the last thing what we need in a condition that everybody is now is a set of new rules. I think there is a very open discussion. You clearly feel that the enthusiasm of Black Friday was less big, so there was more selective offer of brands and pieces in Black Friday, and not everybody did Black Friday offers, I think. Also now we are in the full discussion with all our partners and retailers to see when we can break with the sales dates. And it's a much more open discussion. Beforehand, it was much more dictates from our retailers. Now you really can discuss and compare and say, like, look, in Asia, we do it like this. Why don't we do it also? Why don't we follow this system and things like that? So I'm very, very happy and very positive about it that, okay, maybe it's not completely settled this season, but for the season afterwards, let's say for summer, when the situation, let's hope, is going to go a little bit more back to normal, I am a strong belief that we will be able to push the sales back to all the sales back to July.
Okay. This conversation wouldn't be complete without a discussion of fashion shows and Fashion Week, and let's deal with them separately because they're, they can get mixed together, but I know that there's a nuance there. Dries, I'm going to go back to you again because I remember early in the conversations that you and I had in the pandemic, the fashion show was, a really critical part of your creative process as you described it to me. And, thinking about moving when a fashion show happens, should it happen after you've kind of designed the collection but before you've taken it to market, or should it be timed with the arrival of collections or near to the arrival of collections in stores? And then no one could have fashion shows, really, this past September and October. And you had to do something completely different. You were this devotee of the fashion show. And then you did the amazing photo shoot with Vivienne Sasson, which just, blew everyone away and traveled all over social media. I mean, how has your view of the role of fashion shows changed?
So, of course, for us, fashion shows was always like the grand finale of the creative process. So when the pandemic started, for me, it was like a catastrophe. I really didn't know how we could bring the emotion to all those people, to the buyers, to the press, to the final customer. We work now really quite strongly on that whole look with the lookbook with what we made with Vivienne Sasson and the little video clips and the whole information about the artists which we collaborated with. And in fact, we discovered that the emotion was there. People were really reacting very strongly on that. And we appreciated, in fact, all the extra information, also that they could turn back to all the information, that they could read more about it if they wanted. So it completely changed my attitude. It's not that I say now, okay, I'm never going to do fashion shows again. But I have a much more open mindset now, because I think now this season, we know that in January and March, there's not going to be fashion shows again. So we embrace it. We kind of embrace the limitations what we have. So we use, in fact, the fact that we can't do a fashion show as a starting point to think about our collection and the way that we're going to communicate about it. So we turn it completely around as a positive aspect. Later on, I don't know how it's going to go, but for me, also, the whole discussion about in season or not in season, I think everybody's experimenting now. You clearly see that everybody does now tryouts. People learn so fast. I think all the creative people with all the brands, all the independent brands, they learn really fast. And you see now already that, okay, things went well, sometimes well and sometimes less well for the first time. But I'm very curious to see what everybody's going to show now in January and February, because I think the real creative explosion we can expect only now.
Yeah, there's been a lot of learning in the last few months, for sure. Anya, you changed your fashion show strategy a while ago, and you have said to me that fashion shows in the kind of old system are just not relevant anymore. Why is that?
Well, I only can speak for myself, because I think it's different for everyone. I mean, I think a fashion show is brilliant, to Dries' point about emotion and the finale of the creative process, all of which I think is really relevant. We felt for us that we were spending a lot of money and making a huge amount of, it felt quite wasteful, honestly, for 9 minutes. Obviously, you create content, which is really important, and you engage the customer. But we actually moved to doing more sort of citywide pieces and even locals. We might do something in Japan, for example, instead, where we felt it was more inclusive. I think that was something that actually was very well received by our sort of customer base, and it felt open, and they didn't feel it was sort of the industry only and excluded. So I think at the point when fashion shows started being sort of opened by Instagram, it felt then in a way this sort of quite exclusive thing. So it was nice to open it up. And I just creatively, I like chopping and changing. I think it's nice to be able to actually to move to what feels right for the collection. So we will do that and respond. In fact, our last show, in inverted commas, was actually closing all our stores and filling it with 90,000 used water bottles. So there are many ways to do a show, I think.
Yeah. Well, we're almost out of time. I did want to ask all of you, what do you think can now be accomplished with the kind of merging of these two groups that have been operating over the last 9 months? I mean, what role can this kind of new merged entity play in kind of helping to define whatever the future system is like. And I think it's become clear to all of us that new system is not going to be born overnight, right? It's going to be a system that is going to slowly come together and form, probably in a quite organic way. So Dries, we'll go to you first, and then I'll take it to Anya and Stefano. What can happen now with these two groups? What role can they play in the industry?
I think it can be a very open platform for discussion. And I think, especially also sharing information, it's a little bit the same message that we said in the beginning. I think it's a new factor that people talk to each other. And it's not only designers together with designers, but I think even more important, it's like retailers, e-com players, people like that also who share information in a different way than always like client and retail and brand. So it's important, I think, that really people there can share things in all different ways. More important things, maybe small details, but as the whole fashion world is now so much in evolution, we are learning every day again new things. We have to be very strong because the times are not going to be easy either next year. So I think the more that we can share, the better it will be.
Okay, Anya?
Well, I think there's a sort of wish list of things we're trying to sort out, some of which I think we're making progress on. I think it's about a timetable that works. I think it's about getting product delivered in relevant seasons. I think it's about having full margin sales. And I think it's about building relationships with the wholesale community to make sure that all fits together. I think it's trying to make sense of Fashion Week, and obviously it's efficient to kind of commune together. So it's finding our way through that to make it work. It wasn't working before. It was frankly quite broken. So we shouldn't come out of this in the way that we went in. I think we will move forward probably.
Stefano?
I believe that a consumer should be at the focus and the central focus of everything we do, and going forward more and more, independent designers, wonderful talents I have the privilege to work with, want freedom in how to express themselves. And one season can be a movie and could be a see now by now movie, and the other season could be a traditionally autumn-winter season in autumn-winter fashion week. There are platforms out there, amazing platforms. The fashion weeks stay relevant as a pivotal element of our industry. They have the opportunity to be a 365 days platform in favor of independent and larger designers rather than focusing only on those 4 weeks per year. So I see a bright future where creativity is focused on consumer and has freedom.
Okay, we have about 1 minute left, and I don't want to miss the question around the Fashion Week. So if you had your crystal ball in front of you and you're trying to predict what Fashion Week will look like 1 year from now, let's say everyone's got a vaccine, what does it look like, Anya?
I would like it to be massively creative. I think it should be less exclusive, possibly maybe involve more of the city, perhaps. There's so much fashion. Take London, it's full of fashion. So I think it could be opened up and it could be a celebration of fashion across the city. I think that'd be great.
Okay, Stefano?
Echoing, absolutely. I was thinking about Il Salone del Mobile in Milan. I believe it needs to open its door to the consumers and provide joy and happiness to both the creators and the consumers.
Okay, and the final word to you, Dries. What does fashion look like in an ideal world 1 year from now?
That's a very difficult question. I have really more than 1 minute for that, I think. No, but I think it's the love of fashion. I think the emotion which we have to bring back. I think fashion became really too much like a business and selling products, where I think it's very important that we can share the love, because at the end, I think we all are all spoiled people, that we can work in something which is so beautiful as fashion. And I think this emotion has to come back.
Okay. Well, Stefano, Anya, and Dries in Antwerp, thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to collaborating together in the coming year as we kind of rebuild the fashion system. All right.
Thank you very much.
Next, we meet a young man who's been building a fledgling fashion business while taking care of those suffering from COVID-19 as an emergency room trauma nurse at night. Stay with us. There we go. Welcome back to Voices 2020, Inside the Fashion System. In our BOF community exit poll, we asked you how various industry challenges stack up and which ones are the most important to address. When we looked at the results, we noticed something interesting. According to our poll, the economic recovery is definitely front of mind overall for all respondents. But if we focus on the Gen Z respondents, the industry challenges stack up differently. Creating a more circular fashion industry becomes the #1 issue to address. And the challenges the industry is facing around workers' rights and diversity and inclusion, well, they move up the scale too. It seems it will be the younger members of our community who will hold us to account for ensuring that all of this awareness turns into action. And that's why I'm so excited about our final talk of today's session, Inside the Fashion System. Early this year, our New York-based senior correspondent, Chantal Fernandez, was introduced to a young man trying to break into the fashion business. On the surface, it's a story we've all heard before. But what makes this young designer different is that he's also an emergency trauma nurse who's been tending to COVID-19 patients while simultaneously trying to keep his fashion business afloat. After reading about him, I was curious to meet him, and I thought you would all enjoy meeting him too. So now I'm pleased to welcome Oluwole Olosunde, aka Instagram's Guacawole, who joins us now from New York City to share his inspiring story and also some thoughts on how to breathe new life into the fashion industry. Welcome, Wole.
Hi, Imran. Thank you for having me.
Over to you.
Okay, so as Imran said, my name is Oluwole Olosunde. I'm an emergency room trauma nurse and also fashion designer. I always feel like my life kind of like seesaws between these two worlds that kind of molded into what you see today. I work night shifts, so my life is often flipped in comparison to the normal person. Working in the emergency department, things never really stop. It's always a continuous cycle. There's always nurses that need to be ready. There's always doctors that need to be ready for whatever that is that's going to come in. And I love the ER because just like fashion, it's full of surprises. You know, you never know what's going to come into the door, and you never know what type of curveball you're going to be thrown. And you just have to be ready to adapt. My love for science and the interest in the human body is what pulled me to healthcare. But New York City, that raised me, is what has always tied me to my love for fashion. New York City kind of holds style to a high esteem. And as a Black man, I feel like my style is like my first line of communication to the world that often pairs my appearance to a stereotype. Stereotypes, you know, they place a stereotype on you that attempts to place you in a box and delegates what you can know or what you can possibly do. But being a nurse and a designer, they're two wildly different careers to the naked eye. But in my opinion, I find there to be so many similarities. The attention to detail, you know, understanding anatomy and the shape of the human body, how the body moves in relation to how the piece will move, understanding the skin and the integumentary system and how the clothing will feel on the body, feel against the skin. But also understanding emotion and how it might make the person feel as they wear that garment. Both industries have been like really shaken by what's going on nowadays with the pandemic and everything. And it makes me really think like, how will we move forward? Because this moment right now is the opportunity to advance. Going to nursing school, I always wanted to be a labor and delivery nurse. I always thought of childbirth as, you know, this sacred, beautiful moment. It's like the next step in people's relationships, and you're kind of being a part of this really formative moment in people's lives. It feels like you yourself is single-handedly, you know, playing a part to manifest a new life. And in nursing school, I worked 6 months on a labor and delivery unit as a specialty rotation. And one day, I remember there was this refugee woman who did not speak much English. And she came in ready to deliver, fully dilated, very restless, just couldn't stay still. You know, we wheel her into the triage room, and there's no point of a triage because she's ready to deliver. So we go directly to a birthing suite. That day made me think so much about time because she was so ready to deliver that we couldn't even put an IV in. It was me and another nurse in the room and no other doctors, because doctors are on call and on a labor unit. Sometimes as there's idle time, the doctors are not on the unit. So it's me and another nurse in the room, and we delivered the baby ourselves. I was attempting to put a monitor on mom, and I continuously kept moving downward and downward, trying to find the spot of the baby's heartbeat, and I couldn't find it. And as the baby descends, it gets lower and lower. So I moved the sheet to kind of put the transducer lower on her abdomen, and I see the baby's head literally just sliding out. And, you know, you think we have so much time and we have, you know, control over the time we have, but ideally we don't. When things are supposed to happen, they just happen. And I feel like right now is a formative time in all of our lives that we have to take advantage of this. According to the National Institute of Health, Black women are actually 3 to 4 times more likely to experience pregnancy-related death than white women. African-American babies actually have 2 times the risk of infant mortality compared to whites, according to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And it feels abnormal to even say that out loud. Like, it doesn't, to me, that just doesn't make sense. And they're proven facts. Like, why are we okay with these statistics? And if we're not, what are we going to do about it? As a registered nurse, I'm always seeing and treating a wide array of people, you know, hearing their stories and understanding their lifestyles and cultures, listening to the many different languages, and paying attention to their names and the way that they're spelled. By respecting people and who they are, through that you can create a care process based off their own culture and social norms. These experiences have structured a mind that works really rapidly but compassionately, and that's how you have to work in the emergency department. I've learned a lot about people as a whole. You see people at their most vulnerable, and it's stripped away a lot of prejudgments that people usually have when they meet someone new. I get eager to meet new people and understand their perspective and hear a new story. You know, it teaches you, because no matter how smart you claim you are, someone knows something that you don't. And this is where we must collaborate. This is where we must embrace a new theme and a new idea and include those who conceived it, because it won't translate correctly. Just like healthcare, fashion has its blind spots, spots that we must now shine the light and scare away all the discrepancies. It's our duty to address those discrepancies in our industry, and we must face the facts and accept our issues and formulate new initiatives and new programs to address them. Fashion is currently in a hyper-political state, and we must take advantage of that to truly revolutionize our industry. Some people ask, when did fashion get so political? As if the American punk era never existed, you know? It's like, sometimes you walk into a room of fashion executives or, you know, forward thinkers in fashion, and it's like, where are all the young people? You know, we're all young at heart, but the young people are who dictate what's going to be next. And in order for us to actually move forward, we have to embrace them. We have to give them opportunity. That brings me to a theme that must continue to dwell in our minds as we shape the future: diversity and inclusion. You have to diversify not only the runway, but your beauty teams to make those new models look beautiful. We must widen accessibility, not only at the face level, but diversifying those boardrooms. You have to include the people of the culture in order to be able to discuss it. I believe that someday we might have like maybe a fashion A&R, because music has its own A&Rs and people who look for new talent and new people who are going to push that boundary forward. And I feel like fashion needs that in itself. We have to get rid of the idea that fashion school graduates are the only ones who can be eligible for fashion positions. I graduated from nursing school, and I taught myself a lot of what I know, but I also had help along the way. As a second of 5 children born from Nigerian immigrants, I grew up in Clayton Hill, Brooklyn, and it never ceases to amaze me how much my parents have put together from nothing. As a child and all through my teens, I never saw my mom not in school. I never saw her not studying. You know, waking up and getting water and she's just in a corner over her books, and getting paid $4 or like $3, whatever she would give me a page to type her papers up because she didn't work a computer too well. And just my dad always adjusting his schedule to make sure that she can, you know, accommodate her studies. watching them both constantly work hard towards the advancement of themselves and our family amazed me every day. It taught me that nothing I want is impossible. But although inspired by their drive, my parents, like many immigrants, were not too fond of my early passion for fashion. Skipping 2 grades and graduating high school at 16, I had much time to evaluate where I would take myself for the future. But to my parents, fashion was never really like a secure career. And even as the cultivators of style, Black people often don't see themselves in fashion positions because it's not realistic for us. You know, we don't see ourselves on that face value, on the public level in those realms. You know, our voices may now be amplified to an extent, but historically we've been silenced. And I think of models like Naomi Campbell and Yasmin Guardi and Tyra Banks and Lu Wen, who, you know, and the newer models like Alton Mason and all these huge faces who inspire and give people hope through their platform. I think of designers like Virgil Abloh, who's also first generation and born from Ghanaian parents, who doesn't have a formal fashion education, but has taken himself to the highest platforms of men's design. You know, to me, he majored in architecture, and architecture is the epitome of design. You're designing a society in which people will live in. You're designing an experience that's going to be continual over years. In 2017, he like pretty much revolutionized. To me, Virgil really took streetwear to an extent that I never thought it would be. He proved himself as a creative by revolutionizing streetwear and then entering the men's luxury world. Just like I've combined my 2 worlds of like healthcare and design, in my eyes, he combined the 2 worlds of luxury and streetwear, thus conceiving much of what fashion has become today. But in 2017, before I started Against Medical Advice, which is my brand, I actually met Virgil. He was premiering his glasses at Warburg Parker at their store. And I had just completed the first pair of sunglasses I made in collaboration with my friend Keith Taylor, who was a mechanical engineering student at Drexel University. I designed the glasses and Keith 3D printed them on his home printer. And I was so excited to show Virgil the design because I was walking past the store and I saw that he was premiering his glasses as well. We spoke for about 5 minutes about like augmented reality and 3D printing, which were 2 things that I thought would revolutionize the industry in terms of like marketing and sampling. And the glasses that I made were actually a 3D printed sample that I had. After the entire conversation, I asked for an internship and he asked me to DM the Off-White Instagram page. And I thought back onto today they premiered the Aaron Christian's The Internship. And that really connected with me because it made me think of that drive to get your foot in the door, you know, as a new creative and a new designer, and that confidence that you have in your work sometimes. And you just want it to be seen. You just want to let people know that I deserve this spot and I will do what it takes to get there, you know? And when I'm given that opportunity, I'll do everything that it takes to allow it to grow, you know? And I think of when I started as a nurse and I wanted to work in emergency or labor and delivery. Those were the 2 sectors where I was like, okay, applying to jobs, this is where I want to work. And as a new nurse, you're typically not going to start in an emergency because you don't have any experience. But my boss gave me that opportunity. She said that we like new nurses sometimes when they show when they show immense talent, because we know that we can harness that for our own growth. We can raise that nurse into the nurse that we believe they need to be, to the standard that, you know, the CDC or all the people who make our guidelines, you can teach them all those things and allow them to incorporate that into their practice. And we as fashion can learn a lot. We as a fashion industry can learn a lot from that, honestly. Embracing new designers and teaching them the ropes, introducing them to our big fashion houses and allowing them to grow under us. You know, and there's another saying where they say nurses eat their young. And instead of like facilitating the growth of new nurses who are coming to the industry, they kind of push them away and shun them and don't welcome them and don't share their resources. And this isolates the new nurse in the workplace. But to whose benefit? It's not to the benefit of that nurse, or it's not to the benefit of the patient. And just as like a fashion industry, it's not to the benefit of that specific individual or society as a whole. By including promising new talent, it gives us the opportunity to raise that person and mold them into the designer or employee or whatever the position is that you want them to be. I just feel like as we move forward, we must continuously think of how we can include the new and the up and coming. And during my 2 years in Buffalo in nursing school, I met a lady who owned an alteration store. I tried to convince her to construct the garment from scratch, but she stuck to her ways and said, I only do alterations, and that's where I make most of my money. She refused to make me that piece, but she invited me to her space. She allowed me to use her machines. She taught me what she knew. She passed down all the information that she had to equip me to be able to make my own garments. By opening her space to me, I learned everything I know about garment construction today. I was able to make a lot of my own clothes in her space, and I brought all of those samples back with me to New York after nursing school. We as an industry can learn a lot from this woman. Her name was Ann Rods. She owned a very small store on Bailey Avenue in Buffalo, south of Buffalo. And I would ride my bike there on a daily basis from my studies or from clinical. I think back to nursing school a lot because that balance that I had then has kind of shaped the balance that I need now. You know, going from clinical to the library to her studio, back to my dorm to sleep and then do it all again the next day. And then now it's just turned into, you know, you get off a 7 a.m. shift and I have to run home, pick up my orders, go to the post office, then go back home, you know, sneak in a nap. And like, it's just always, you know, trying to find a balance between everything that I do. The pandemic, wow, 2020. I think about this a lot too, because the pandemic, 2020, I always say it's the best year of my life, not in terms of all of these happy things that are happening, because that's not the reality. It's more so, I feel like I grew the most this year. And I feel like we as a society grew the most this year. You know, it was an eye-opening time. Everyone's kind of more aware of what's important because that's all that's left, you know. At work, after the pandemic started, everything changed. Nothing was what it used to be. The ER didn't look the same. It didn't operate the same. We had patients everywhere. It was so hard to even walk around. It impacted me in a way that I honestly will never forget. I think back to like the AIDS epidemic and how established that was in history and, you know, what this is going to mean for people today. So concluding, I just want to leave you with three things and ask you a question. How can we breathe a new life into fashion? How can we be more inclusive? How can we be more diverse? You know, there's so many things happening in this world and people are scared. People are dying. People are tired. They're restless. They want something new. You know, I think of this moment at work during the pandemic and, you know, we have oxygen tanks and that's kind of our main source of like, this being a respiratory disease, everyone uses oxygen. Like everyone comes in and they need oxygen. Even if we don't give you, if your oxygen levels are low and we don't give you any medications, oxygen is something we put you on to see how you respond to it. And, you know, we used a lot of it during this time. And there was one day where we kind of ran out of all the tanks that we had nearing the end of our shift. And, you know, you have 10 patients and 6 of them are on oxygen. And you're kind of figuring out who's the most sick, who deserves the oxygen, you know, the most. And it's such a weird feeling even having that power. You're deciding who to breathe, who am I to, you know, make that decision. I feel like this pandemic was such a trying time, and I want to give a shout out to all the healthcare professionals and everyone who's, you know, made the sacrifices that they made through this entire time. I ended up getting COVID. It wasn't easy. It was, and I'm a pretty healthy person. I don't get sick too much, and you know that scared me because me, who's healthy and doesn't get sick, I got the disease, and you know I'm working to make people better and to, you know, help them and get them out of that place. And I just kept thinking, like, how did I get here? I'm working for good. It doesn't make sense, you know? But I'm just thankful that I recovered. I'm thankful for my health. And I feel like as a society, fashion, healthcare, whatever industry you might work in, this is an important time to remain informed, to remain healthy, spread information to your families and friends. We have to take care of ourselves and we have to take care of our world. And I'm very excited to be here. I'm very thankful to be here. And I want to give it up to you, Imran. Thank you so much for giving me this platform.
Thank you so much, Wole. That was amazing to hear your perspective. There's all these comments coming through. You have such a unique perspective on this year and so relevant for our industry. So I'm grateful for your time today. Thank you so much. Thanks also to all of our other speakers for their time and contribution to today's session, Going Inside the Fashion System. Our next session on technology and innovation will begin shortly at 5 p.m. London time. That's 12 noon in New York. We'll explore how new technologies are changing consumer behavior and how they're opening up new growth avenues for fashion companies all around the world. As always, please share your feedback with us using the hashtag BOF Voices. I'll see you all very shortly.